Very pleased to bring you all today an interview with independent presidential candidate, the one and only RFK Jr. Welcome back. Great to see you, sir.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, of course.
Of course, sir. Well, you're probably the foremost independent candidate that we've seen in this country for quite a long time. And one of the things that we really want to do in this interview is to take you seriously. So one of the things that you've talked about is gaining ballot access. So can you guarantee that you're going to be on the ballot in all 50 states? We just saw an Axios report. You've got about $15 million appropriated. You're going to be on the ballot in 8 states that you're targeting. But can you guarantee you're going to be on all 50 of these ballots?
We'll be on the ballot in all 50 states and the district.
Okay. And what's the plan for that? Because as I understand it, you're not on the ballot yet in a single state. I know you successfully were able to challenge the law in Utah, but do you have ground operations in every single one?
We're now fully submitted and approved in Utah.
Okay.
So that's our first state. But we have 250,000 volunteers. And we have,
It's extraordinary.
Yeah, we have many more than any other campaign. And we're very confident that we can get it. Most of the states is it's pretty basic. There's a handful of states that make it very, very difficult. New York is one, California is another, Texas is another. And, you have to pay attention to the rules, and we'll probably have to do some litigation, and they're going to litigate against us. But we're shooting for getting, I think, 60% cushion, so we're going to get what we need plus 60% more. So if they knock out some signatures, we should have a cushion enough to be able to.
You made an interesting comment. I think it was on the Theo Von podcast. You said that when you go independent, that you were going to take more votes away from Trump. So now you've been doing this now for a couple of months. What do your internal polling show in terms of the support, who you're drawing? Is it Biden? Is it Trump? Is it non-voters? What do you see?
We're drawing pretty evenly, and we're getting a lot from people, from non-voters. The reason, the Politico did a piece on us that showed where they did a really meticulous breakdown of our donor base. And they said in that a shocking number of our donors were people who never donated to a political campaign before. And that's what we're finding. But just anecdotally, the people coming to our rallies are from all across the board. And I think the early polling showed me polling more from Trump. But I don't, the big polls are probably, the big polls like Quinnipiac and Harvard-Harris, New York Siena that are looking at 3,000, 4,000 people are probably even more accurate than our internal polls. So, you know as much as I do, but I think it's pretty even.
Do you think you're going to be on the debate stage with Biden and Trump? Have you had a plan with the Commission on Presidential
Debates? I don't
Debates?
know. Do you think Biden's going to debate?
That's a great question for you. You know him. You know him better than we do.
Yeah, but I don't. Yeah. I haven't seen him in years, and I have not seen him do an unscripted event in, I think, a year at least.
Yeah.
So I don't know what they're going to do, but the rules are they have 3 debates scheduled, and I have them on my personal schedule. Okay. So I have at least that much confidence that they'll let me on. But the rule that they've adopted is if you have 15% of the vote, you're on, and I'm way above that.
Okay. That's actually a quick thing on that. So you mentioned about Biden not debating. Last time that we spoke, you didn't want to get into Biden's mental status, his fitness for president. You're independent now. You're not running in the Democratic primary. You just made that comment about him debating. Do you want to go into that? I mean, do you think
I was asking you what you thought.
Okay.
I think it's an issue that is now publicly debated. And publicly discussed, which his mental acuity, and I think it's fair, to say, are you able to debate? It takes a tremendous amount of energy and vigor to run this country, and are you up to that, particularly at this point in history? So I think it's fair, for people to ask that, not in a mean-spirited way.
Right.
But we've seen. I think yesterday he did a press conference in which the answers appeared to have been written out for him in advance, and that's I think the president ought to be able to debate, and ought to be able to have unscripted conversations with people.
Yeah. One of the things we've been trying to look at is gaming out how things are going to go. So if you're going to be polling, you're getting 27, 30% possibly of the vote. And we are in a scenario. We've got multiple different candidates. There's no electoral college victory. Have you thought about what that's going to look like? What is your end game if there is no electoral college victory for the House of Representatives, and how would the election play out? I think a lot of people have been asking that question with respect to your run.
If that happens, if there's a contingent election, the Senate then chooses the vice president.
Right.
And the House chooses the president. And they get one vote per state. So if you look at an electoral map, there's 9 more Republican states than there are Democratic states. And so you would assume that Trump would run. But if you look at the individual congressional delegations, neither candidate can get 26 votes. Because a lot of the delegations are split from, just as an example, Minnesota
Right.
is split 50-50.
Yes.
So the Republicans are never going to vote for Trump because their careers will be ruined. And the Republicans are never going to vote for Biden,
Yeah.
and Democrats are not going to vote for Trump. So they would have to find a compromise candidate. And in that case, I'm probably in good shape because my polling, all the public polling shows my favorability ratings ahead of anybody. So what that would mean is that I'm the second choice for people who are voting for Trump, and a lot of people are voting for Biden. So that's one scenario, but this is all speculation and nobody, and spin and all of that, which I don't like to do, and predictions. But
sure
we
you've
have
thought through,
looked
though.
at it.
Well, you have to think about it. If we're
Yeah,
gonna be in
we
a
have
split
to think about
scenario.
it.
Right.
Yeah.
So I guess to continue down on this road, let's say we're in a scenario, you are in one where you have a minority of electoral college votes. Would you release your electors to Biden or to Trump after the first round? Or would you insist on being a compromise candidate?
Oh, I have no idea.
Right. Okay. We haven't had this happen since I think it's like.
Yeah, I would. I mean, I would not even I would make no comment or prediction on that. I intend to win. I think if I'm not a betting person, my wife bets a lot and plays poker. But if I had to, and I also don't like to make predictions or like to make spin. But if I had to put money on a candidate right now, I would put it on me.
All right. Well, my last question kind of for this section is, we watched a lot of people, conservative media figures largely, Sean Hannity, a lot of large conservative Twitter accounts. They built you up when you were running the Democratic Party. I watched them kind of turn a little bit on you.
On a dime.
Pretty much immediately whenever you decided to run
Sean
for
Hannity
independent.
definitely turned on
He
me.
did. We watched it all
We
live.
watched it.
Yeah,
We might have covered it here. I can't remember.
We did. What
There
do
was
you
a lot
think
of
that?
drama preceding that too.
Tell us about it. What is it?
Well, I
Yeah.
don't want to go into it, but it was. I had a long relationship with Sean because during the, when I had this weird relationship with Roger Ailes, who was the founder of Fox News, and when I was 19 years old, I spent 3 months in a tent with him in Africa.
Yeah, I remember you telling me this. Yeah.
And then I had this weird relationship because he was like Darth Vader to me, and and we were absolutely antithetical politically, but he was a very loyal friend, and he would. When I wanted to talk about the environment on issues, he would make the Fox hosts or urge them to, like Neil Cavuto, like Bill O'Reilly, like Sean, have me on. So I assumed he was twisting their arm, but maybe they wanted me on. I don't know. But I would talk about the environment on it, and I had a lot of run-ins with Sean. We were like oil and water all that time.
Right.
And then he kind of ambushed me once early on in the campaign. And I just said, okay, that's that. I learned my lesson from that. But then he called me, and he asked to call me on a weekend. And he called me and he said he wanted to talk to me for about 40 minutes. And so I had a very pleasant conversation. He said, I want you to come back, and I'm going to treat you fairly this time. I was like, okay. And then I went back and I had a great time on his show. And then he did a town hall and it was wonderful. And then as soon as Trump announced,
Right.
I got bushwhacked. So, and I just sat there and took it for, 20 minutes. So, it's just part of the
Part of it.
part of the deal.
Yeah, it was kind of amazing to watch how quickly, though.
Right.
Like, it
Yeah.
was literally.
It was a bit on a dime.
yeah, some people even were openly like,
Yes, actually, we
Yeah.
have covered here before. There was a conservative influencer. He's got over 1 million followers. He said, "Look, I built up RFK when he was a threat to Biden." He's like, "But now we have to highlight all the liberal things that he believes." But you have no problem with that. It is what it is.
Yeah, it is what it is.
Okay. All right.
let's turn to a little bit. Of,
I'm grateful for them letting me on when they did.
Sure.
you know.
Yeah. Absolutely. Take it.
so let's turn to a little bit of policy and specifically the topic of Israel, obviously very much in the news right now. So President Biden's administration, they have said that they have no red lines for the state of Israel and their conduct in this war. Do you have any red lines for Israel?
Well, the red lines are that, you don't deliver, you do everything you can, which I think Israel is doing right now, to avoid civilian casualties. But, there's collateral damage in every war, and they're fighting an implacable enemy. I mean, I don't think there's any country in the world that would go as far as Israel has gone to not invade Gaza. I mean, Israel was being bombed by Hamas. Took over Gaza. Israel walked out of Gaza. There's no occupation of Gaza.
The blockade, though.
Well, there's a blockade because Hamas declared war on Israel and sent suicide bombers off. So they put up a fence. So it's their, that's like the guy who kills his parents and then throws himself on the mercy of the court because he's an orphan. For them to say that they're blockaded, they're blockaded, and it's not just Israel that's blockading them; it's Egypt.
Well,
Everybody has a problem with Hamas. In fact, after the '73 war, after the '67 war, Israel tried to give Hamas back to Egypt, and Egypt didn't want to take it because
you mean Gaza?
Gaza back to Egypt. Egypt didn't want to take it because of the high level of sort of religious militant Islam that Egypt considered a threat to its own government.
But let
me just finish.
Sure.
Israel, Hamas took over in 2006.
Right.
And they immediately started shelling Israel. So they sent on average 2,000 rockets a year on civilian populations. And their charter and their public statements day after day are it's against Islamic law for them to even negotiate with Israel except as a ruse. It says that in their charter. The only satisfaction for them, the only goal, is to annihilate Israel and kill every Jew, not just in Israel, but all around the world. So Israel, instead of going in and attacking, if Mexico elected a communist government and the communist government began sending shells onto civilian populations in San Antonio and Houston and say, we're going to retake Texas, which they have a legitimate claim to, we're going to retake it. How long would it take us to go in there? It wouldn't take us very long. We would go in and we would do whatever it took to take out the people who are sending the shells. And Israel, instead of doing that, Israel did something extraordinary, which is it invested in an Iron Dome, which is to defend itself against, just to live with missiles. There's thousands, tens of thousands of Israelis that have, on that part of Israel that have been raised in bomb shelters. Who would put up with that? There's
so, Bobby,
nobody in the world.
No one here is excusing the actions of Hamas, but I think you would agree that one atrocity does not justify another. So how can you, hold on. Hold on. How can you say, though, how can you say.
But calling it an atrocity.
I haven't finished my question.
Right, go ahead.
How can you say that Israel is doing everything they can to avoid civilian death when the civilian death toll, even by Israeli estimates, and this is the low, this is the best possible number you could put on it, is 61% innocent civilians, thousands of children, thousands of women. That's worse than the combination of every 20th century conflict combined. So how can you look at that and combine with the complete siege of 2.2 million people and say that they are doing everything they can to protect civilian life?
First of all, what you said is not true. We killed
What's not true?
we killed 750,000 civilians in Iraq.
She's talking percentage-wise.
What?
She's talking
Percentage-wise.
percentage-wise.
The percentage of the average kill rate in Afghanistan, Mosul, in those battles, in modern warfare is about 8 or 9 to 1, civilians to military.
And you think that's fine? 80%
Well,
civilian death, you're fine
Well,
with that?
I don't think a single civilian death is fine. Not a single, but when we went into Germany to get out the Nazis, we killed 2 million Germans. We bombed Dresden.
Which is why,
We bombed
and actually
Cologne.
there's an analysis that just came out that showed the bombing of northern Gaza has been more devastating and more destructive than our bombing of Dresden. I would also say after World War II, that's why we put in place things like the Geneva Conventions, to make sure that we did as much as we could to protect civilian life. So when you say, let me give you a specific report that you can respond to. The Washington Post, we can put this up on the screen, guys. This is the second element.
R2.
The Washington Post just reported that Israel dropped U.S.-supplied white phosphorus in an attack in Lebanon in a way that is inconsistent with the laws of war, directly impacting a civilian population. Are these, now you might say, look, maybe the report's in dispute, maybe we need to go and investigate, but is this or any other of Israeli conduct in this war, is this something that you think should be investigated for potential violations of international law?
Again, if Israel dropped white phosphorus on civilian populations illegally, then they should be prosecuted for war crimes.
Yeah.
But I don't think there's strong evidence that they've done that, and Israel absolutely denies it. There are legal ways to use white phosphorus because it's used,
Right.
in war, which is as a concealant. And Israel says that's what it's doing. Here's what Israel's done. Israel has calls people before they bomb them. Nobody else in the world does that. It's made 20,000 live calls. So an Arab-speaking IDF member who calls the landlord, they have the telephone numbers of everybody in Gaza. Now, there's a lot of connectivity problems, so they can't always
barely cell access right now.
Let me finish. They've made 20,000 live calls with people telling, here's what's going to happen. You need to move out. In your neighborhood, on your building. They've sent 1.2 million robocalls. They've sent 1.2 million pamphlets. The pamphlets are color-coded for date and for time, so that you don't see an old pamphlet and say, oh, this won't apply to me. So people know when that building is going to get bombed. And they do something nobody else in the world does, because they invented it, which is they send in roof knockers, which is a projectile that hits the roof 2 hours before they bomb the building to warn the people in that building to get out because they're going to bomb it. In warning the civilians, they're also warning Hamas. And so it makes it much more difficult. And, the fact there's many, many nations in the world that would just go and flatten the whole place, which Israel could do. It doesn't have to go in there and put IDF soldiers at risk in hand-to-hand combat. This is Hamas has made this stand. They're putting civilians in the way. What is Israel supposed to do? It can't leave Hamas in there.
But Bobby, I don't think we should accept that from any state, Israel
Well,
or any other. And I mean, they have rendered.
would you-
Hold on. They've rendered Gaza City uninhabitable at this point. And there's been reports documenting that some of the procedures that you're talking about that they used in previous wars, they're not using this time. They've emphasized this attack on quote-unquote power targets, which are things like civilian infrastructure and high-rise apartment buildings, not to get Hamas, but to create a, quote, shock in the civilian population. In addition, as I mentioned before, you have a collective punishment of 2.2 million people who are having their access to water, food, fuel, medicine blocked right now by Israel. This also appears to be in violation of the Geneva Conventions. Do you think that it's acceptable to impose a siege on the entire civilian population in Gaza?
If there's a violation, first of all, I don't think that's happening. Let me explain. Second of all, if it violates the Geneva Convention, or if they're deliberately, at any point, anybody is deliberately targeting civilians, they should be prosecuted and they should be jailed and the key should be thrown away. And people say this, but I don't see any proof of that.
You don't see
right now,
proof of
that people
going
are
hungry?
deliberately targeting civilians.
But the government announced they were doing a complete siege on the 2.2 million.
Yeah,
population.
okay. You're talking about the
siege.
The siege. Now, we did for 10 years. We did collective punishment of Iraq. We actually
I'm not
killed.
trying to justify that either here.
Yeah, but why are we just going after the Jews? Why, why is it only when
Bobby,
Israel does it? Let me just finish this right now.
Because our tax dollars are going to fund what's going on, and the visuals of these children being killed and losing their parents and the rubble and the total destruction. This is something our government is backing. Of course, we have an
I have
interest
friends in Gaza. Okay, I have a friend who is a father of 5 kids, and what he's living through right now is horrible. I have many Palestinian friends. I've been to West Bank. I've met with the Palestinian leadership. I love the Palestinian people. It's excruciating watching what's happened. But why are we blaming Israel? Why are we blaming
they're
the
the ones
people?
dropping the bombs
They have
with our dollars.
They have to get at Hamas. They have to destroy Hamas. And
okay.
Hamas, unfortunately, built tunnels for themselves, but they did not build bomb shelters for their people. And Israel has told people, move to the south. There's food trucks there. There's medicine there. There's fuel there.
But there's not.
It's only not there
the area
because
they
Hamas
told them
steals
to
it.
go to is an area that is the size of LAX airport. It is a desert wasteland. There are no UN flag facilities. In fact, if you ask the Secretary General of the UN, he'll tell you there are no safe places in Gaza. You already have 1.8 million people who have been displaced from their homes. So, at what point do you say, okay, it's enough? Because the other piece of this, even if you say, and I know you're not saying this, but even if you say I don't care about the Palestinian lives, they got to do what they got to do. It's the cost of war. What are you going to do? There's also a lot of evidence that what they're actually doing is fomenting increasing support for Hamas. Because if you think about it, if you're a kid and your parents get blown up, what kind of politics do you think you're going to have when you grow up? Isn't that going to be tremendously radicalizing and incredibly compromising to the security of Israelis alike?
So how would you get rid of Hamas?
Well,
if you're Israel.
Well, I'm not running for president of the United States, number one.
But
number two,
you.
I think we have a model for this in a sense from the way we went in and approached bin Laden. So it was a targeted raid. If you're actually going to do this, you do a counter-terror operation where you go in a targeted way. You create a wedge between Hamas and the civilian population. And we see how this works in the past because previously in Israeli society, when there were pathways to peace that were on the table, where the Palestinian civilian population felt that they had a chance at negotiating some sort of a peaceful outcome, guess what? Support for Hamas falls off a cliff. It's almost a one-to-one relationship with the more brutal the response from the Israelis, the more support for radicalism that there is.
You can filibuster.
I'm not filibustering. You asked me a question. I'm trying to answer it.
Yeah, I think you're filibustering. You're not answering the question. You're saying drive a wedge. Well, of course Israel's trying to drive a wedge.
By offering some other path that's not terrorism
what is that
and not
path?
violence.
What is that
path? It's a path to a two-state solution or some sort of a just and lasting peace.
And the Palestinians not only have rejected that, but Hamas, its whole purpose was the reason that Hamas was able to get all this popular support and take over was because of its opposition to any negotiation.
Hamas just came out and said that they support Israel's PLO and recognize Israel's right to exist. On the other hand, you have the ambassador. Hold on, you have the ambassador, the Israeli ambassador to the UK saying we will absolutely no to a two-state solution.
I just cannot let you tell that's just not true. Ismail
happened.
Ismail Haniyeh was on TV on Al Jazeera yesterday, saying we're going to do this again and again and again. We will never negotiate.
Which we covered and which is disgusting. But there's what about the fact? But hold on. What about the fact that Netanyahu and his government have said absolutely no? They built up Hamas to try to thwart any sort of Palestinian statehood. Where's the focus on that?
I'm not defending Netanyahu, and I don't co-sign what Netanyahu and Likud do. Israel is a divided country. 80 or 20% of the population were on the street demonstrating against Netanyahu. What I'm saying is Hamas is a criminal enterprise.
Sure.
Yes.
The Palestinian, and you talk about solutions for the Palestinian people. The
Yeah.
Palestinian people are arguably the most pampered people by international aid organizations in the
Are
history
you
of the
kidding
world.
me?
No, I'm
Even
not.
before this war, 78% of people in Gaza
Let me-
said they had, not enough food to eat.
Right. And why is that? Why are you blaming
Well,
Israel?
in
for that?
part, it's Hamas, and in part, it's the fact that Israel imposed a blockade and talked about putting them on a diet.
If your neighbor, first of all, Israel has no obligation. Israel built 3,000 hothouses and gave them for greenhouses. That would have made Gaza completely food self-sufficient. Gave it to them as a gift. Offered to rebuild the port of Gaza to make it the Singapore of the West. Hamas said, no, we don't want Jew money. We don't want Jew ideas. And what do? The international aid agencies have given Gaza more than 10 times the per capita what we gave to rebuild all of Europe after the Marshall Plan. They've gotten $8,300 per capita, every person in Gaza. We rebuilt Europe with $621 per capita in Europe, and we rebuilt it. What did they do with that money? Instead of using it to make this, Gaza's this beautiful country, white sand beaches, it should be a paradise. Hamas said, we don't want that. They take virtually all of that money and they steal it. So the top 5 guys, the top 5 leaders of Hamas are billionaires. Ismail Haniyeh has $5 billion, according to Forbes.
But Bobby, again,
Wait, let me just
nobody
finish.
here is
No, because you made
defending
you are making a statement that is just wrong. It's not Israel's fault that Gaza is poverty-stricken. Gaza should be one of the wealthiest states on the Mediterranean.
They have no control over their own territory.
Of course, if you
Israel
go to war,
controls
if you go to
everything that comes in and goes out.
If
But
you go to war, no,
what do you-
Crystal,
what do you
why
see-
are you
hold on.
blaming? Why do you insist on blaming Israel rather than blaming
No.
Hamas?
I do blame Hamas, but
Well,
you know what
Hamas-
else, Bobby? Our tax dollars do not go to Hamas. They go to the Netanyahu.
Yeah, and why? And you
it's
know
our
what?
bombs, 22,000
You
of
know
which
what
that are
most-
being bombed, dropped on the
Right?
civilian population right
You
now.
know what most of our tax dollars have gone for? For the Iron Dome, which is a way of not invading Gaza. Our country and Israel for 16 years have expended this huge amount of money to try not to go into Gaza, while Gaza sent 2,000 rockets a year, suicide bombers, and of course
And
Israel's
how
going
many
to buy.
times has Israel come in and quote unquote mowed the lawn?
They've gone in 5 times, and every time they've signed a peace agreement with Hamas, and every time they violated that peace agreement. Let me
Well,
just.
Israel also has been
why
killing
are you-
Palestinians in West Bank. But Bobby, hold on.
Listen,
I want to move
if
forward.
Mexico attacked us and we built a fence, would you blame us for caging in Mexico? Well, I don't know what it is, but everything in your mind is telling you to blame Israel
Bobby.
instead of blaming Hamas.
Bobby, hold on.
Let me just finish saying something.
Because I want to get to the end game. Then Sagar has some questions for you on free speech that I want to make sure we get to because I think this is important as well. What Netanyahu has said and what he's tasked his senior advisor with. We can actually
talk
put
to me
this-
about Netanyahu.
But he's
Let
he's the
me
leader.
answer your
But-
question.
I haven't even asked the question. Let me
Let me
ask the
finish-
question.
let me finish
Can we put this
answering your
element
last
up?
question.
Can we put this element up on the screen? Netanyahu has
And you can
said
answer it too.
that he wants to, quote unquote, thin out the population of Gaza to a minimum. There is simultaneously a proposal that is being shopped here in DC with some bipartisan support that would use our aid dollars to countries in the region to pressure them to accept Palestinian refugees out of Gaza to enable Netanyahu's plan of quote unquote thinning out the population. I'm sure you know he has been very cagey about what he wants the future of Gaza to look like. What do you want the future of Gaza to look like? And is there any circumstance where you would support pushing neighboring countries to resettle Palestinians?
No, I think, listen, I don't, as I said, I don't co-sign anything for Netanyahu or for Likud.
But he's
That's
in
not what I'm
charge.
saying.
So I know, but he's
Well,
the
how would you
person-
deal with him if you're
How
the
would you
president?
deal with it? What would be
says
your
no.
plan for the future of Gaza? If
I think right now, I'm all ears as how do you get rid of Hamas? I think you have to get rid of Hamas. Hamas is a criminal organization that is making the 5 leaders of it are all billionaires. By the way, Yasser Arafat died a billionaire. Mahmoud Abbas a billionaire. His 2 kids who run West Bank have $750 million. It is a criminal enterprise where they are stealing everything from the people of Gaza, and then they raise them from kindergarten to kill Jews. You know, I saw the 43-minute film of the GoPros and the body cams, and the things that I saw on there, you know, the rape, the burning people alive, no matter what happened to you for the rest of your life, no matter how abused you were, no matter how you could never act that way. These kids are being raised as serial killers. They're
Does
being
that
raised.
make them legitimate targets?
Well, the terrorists, yes.
They're-
Right?
no, I'm talking
you're
about
talking
the
about the
terror.
kids. Does
I'm
that
talking,
make them
no,
legitimate targets?
no, that's not what I'm saying, Crystal. What I'm saying is Hamas is oppressing its own people. It's stealing from them, and it's turning them into, it's taking away their childhood. Instead of, you know, just distributing this huge amount of money that they've gotten, building a wonderful culture and society and economic prosperity for them. Instead, it has one purpose, which is to annihilate Jews. And kids, their schools are named after Jew killers. Their streets are named after Jew killers.
You know,
They
a
are
majority of Palestinians.
They are paid bounties to
You
kill
know, a
Jews.
majority of Palestinians in Gaza support a two-state solution.
Well, the polls I've seen right now, I'm all for a two-state solution. Show me how it happens. The last time that Arafat was offered that, which was by Clinton and Ehud Barak in 2001, he was offered everything that the Palestinians had asked for, everything, and except for 3% of the West Bank, and they said, we'll give you 3% of Israel. And those are the suburbs around major Israeli cities that are settled. Oh, and Arafat walked out of that negotiation without a counteroffer, and he later explained to Prince Bandar, if I made a deal, anybody who makes a deal with the Israelis, they will be killed by our own people.
So just to finish this up, sir.
They've been offered a two-state
Finish this
solution
up.
plenty
She
of times.
asked you about your end game. So I just want to get a definitive answer on that. She asked you about your end game, which is, let's say Israel, and we agreed there's no justification of Hamas. Hamas is a criminal enterprise. It's gone. What does a two-state solution look like under the Kennedy administration? The Biden administration is pushing the Palestinian Authority. Netanyahu says no. So is that something that you envision?
Listen,
is Israel going to lead?
First of all, the President of the United States cannot decree that, there's going to be a two-state solution. What we can do is we can pressure Israel, but more importantly, we can use our influence. I think what we need to be doing is to encouraging the Solomon Accords, encouraging peace in the region, encouraging ultimately peace is going to come from prosperity.
Would you condition aid to try to secure a two-state solution, or at least to end the illegal settlements?
I would encourage it, but as I said, more importantly, I would encourage the other nations. I would be talking on the phone right now with President Xi, with President Putin, with all the leaders of the Arab world, and trying to get some kind of collaboration, because I think ultimately that's what's going to happen. But until that, one of the problems, one of the dilemmas for Israel right now is you can say to Israel, let's turn this over to the UN. The UN has never, the blue helmets have always left as soon as the shooting starts.
Sure.
And the UN will not even condemn Hamas. So how is, and then the other Arab states have solidified, have all, expressed solidarity in support of Hamas. So how is Israel to, expect now to turn its fate, its destiny, its duty to protect its own people from danger over to people who say, we don't think there's anything wrong with Hamas, what Hamas did?
All right, so let's move on to free speech. This is something we want to get into here. So I'm sure you saw the clip. Presidents of MIT, University of Pennsylvania, and Harvard University. There's been a campaign, billionaire Bill Ackman, I believe he actually is a supporter of yours, to try and fire those university presidents. So do you think that they should be fired for their answers in saying that calling for the genocide of Jews does not constitute harassment in a call in and of itself? As a supporter of free speech, I'm curious.
Let me ask you something.
Sure. Oh.
If they had called for death to all black people,
we all know what the answer would be. I agree.
What would the answer be?
They would have said immediately. Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
So what's the difference?
Well, I mean, I'm not necessarily sure, though, that in a call for any.
I think, but by the way,
Yeah.
I understand what the difficulty is here is you want free speech.
Yes.
Right.
So we want to maximize free speech.
Right.
At one point, are there different rules on the college campuses? You know, that there's all these rules now that I don't really understand or ascribe to about keeping people safe from bad information. But when something becomes, when it appears to be inciting violence, which I think you could read, you know, death to all Black people or genocide to all Jews as incitement of violence, I think then that's, that should be discouraged.
How do you square that with your free speech absolute? Because there is no like Hitler was right exception to the First Amendment.
No, I mean,
right?
you're right.
Yeah.
I think I mean, the line that we have right now, if you look at the Supreme Court rulings, is that you can't incite violence. So if words that you use or if a jury found, that was inciting violence, that person was inciting violence, then it's no longer protected by the First Amendment.
Actually, a bit worried about that. I mean, people have been saying that you're encouraging like mass death for a lot of their comments on vaccines. They certainly would have used that provision against you.
Oh, I'm happy to try that in court.
Okay, all right.
Oh, I'm happy to try that in front of a jury.
So next question here. Do you think, and this is per congressional resolution, do you think that being anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic? Well, how would you have
remember
voted? How? So there was a measure of that before Congress. If you were in Congress, how would you have voted on that?
Well, what do you define as Zionism?
The
Right for Israel to exist as a
no,
Jewish state?
Well, I think Zionism is a political ideology that predates the state of Israel.
But but it was about having the Jews have their own state.
Have a homeland, yes.
Right, and so are you saying that Jews should not have their own state?
I'm not saying anything. I'm asking you if you think that being anti-Zionist is anti-Semitic. Yeah.
There's 41 countries in the world that have an official religion. Israel is not among them. There is no official religion in Israel. There's freedom of religion. There's 27 Arab states that have official religions.
Yes.
That, and in fact, rules that require Sharia law, which includes bigoted provisions against Jews. There are many, like the West Bank and Gaza and Jordan, apply the death penalty to anybody who sells land to a Jew. So those countries are genuinely apartheid states. They are single religion states. Israel is not one of them. So what you're saying is, the Vatican is a Catholic state.
Yeah.
England is an Anglican state. My aunt, Kit Kennedy, had to change her religion in order to marry a member of the aristocracy.
I remember reading that, yeah.
So, there are many states around the world. I think there's 4 Buddhist states, there's 2 Hindu states, there's 27 Muslim states. There are many, many countries that have official religions, but Israel doesn't. But Israel is officially a Jewish state. It's a homeland for Jews. Its original charter reflects the idealism of Zionism. So if you're saying Jews alone should not have their own state, that is, if that's what anti-Zionism is, then I would say that's like George Wallace.
But surely, Bobby,
let me just finish. It's like George Wallace saying, I'm a segregationist, but I'm not a racist.
But surely, Bobby, you're aware that there's a long tradition of Jews who are opposed to Zionism, who have a critique of Zionism. Not to, there are Christians who are Zionists, there are Jews who are anti-Zionist. So shouldn't there be an ability to critique? What I'm saying, shouldn't there be an ability to critique a political ideology without being, smeared as an anti-Semite?
Well, that's why I asked the definition of what Zionism is. If you're saying that what Zionism is, the belief that Jews can have their own state, and you're against that, I would say that's
criticizing, Saudi Arabia, which has an Islamic Sharia-based government, does that make you Islamophobic?
Or the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, Kashmir, for
Iran.
Example. Yeah.
Does that make you Islamophobic?
Like Kashmir, if we're going to say.
It depends,
Kashmir.
I suppose.
Okay.
If you're saying that it's okay for all those other countries to have a religious government, but Israel alone should not have it, then I think there's something There's something bigoted about that.
Governor DeSantis had banned the organization Students for Justice of Palestine on campus. I'm curious, there have been calls, Republican legislators as well, to use the federal government to investigate these types of student groups. Is that something that you would do under Kennedy administration?
I don't know what that group is, whether they advocating violence or whatever, but I think if somebody's advocating violence against Jews, that they should be banned and they should be investigated. If it's just a pro-Palestine group, no, of course not.
Okay.
They have freedom of speech.
What about the anti-BDS laws? So there's a number of states that have anti-BDS provisions that basically say that if you're a state employee and you advocate for BDS, that's a fireable offense. For boycott, divest, and sanction, which is it was originally used against apartheid South Africa. It's been adopted, I think, by the social justice left largely in relation to Israel as a result of the settlement policy. Whether we agree or not, this is state laws that are on the books and multiple across the United States. You think those violate the First Amendment?
What did the law say exactly?
The laws say that if you embrace or advocate for BDS, so for example, Abby Martin, you might be familiar with her. She's a prominent political commentator. I guess she's done a lot of work on Gaza as well. She successfully challenged one of these laws in the state of Georgia because she's an advocate of BDS, and
they wanted to make
what
her.
What does the law say?
Well, the law says you cannot be paid by the state, and you cannot be. Go ahead, Crystal.
So in her
instance,
instance, she was invited to speak to a public university in Georgia, and as a condition of her speaking gig, she was had to sign a pledge saying that she would not participate in the boycott, divestment, and sanction movement. She successfully challenged that in court on First Amendment grounds. In Texas, they have a lot of states have these laws that say, if you're going to be an employee of the state, you have to sign this pledge that you won't boycott the state of Israel, sort
Teachers
of alone
in Texas
among nations. So you're able to boycott the U.S. or your own government, but not the Israeli government.
Yeah, I mean, my feeling about that is that if you're doing it on your own time and not representing the state, that it's a free speech issue. Mm-hmm. And you ought to listen. I was, support the right of the Nazis to march in Skokie, Illinois.
Yeah, I think we all should.
I think, that the remedy for bad speech, for hate speech, for unpleasant speech is not censorship, it's more speech.
Right.
Let me ask you a more political question. So something I know you tweeted about this, we highlighted here on our show. I actually think you tweeted out the clip of us talking about it, about you leading amongst voters under the age of 45, specifically young voters. You're probably one of the most popular candidates amongst that group. At the same time, we've seen a significant uptick, I think, in pro-Palestinian sentiment. You could say that amongst people who are young. You can co-sign that for a variety of reasons. It could be TikTok, could be anything. So I'm curious politically. I can see emotionally you're very animated about the Israel issue. How do you plan to win those people over when, from what we can see, at least right now on the polling, there's a little bit of distance in the way that they think about the conflict and in the way that you're talking about the conflict?
Yeah, I mean, people are going to vote for who they want to vote for, and some people are going to be single-issue voters, and I'll lose some of those. I mean, I can't do anything except be true to my own heart and do what if somebody has a argument with me and convinces me that I'm wrong about something, and I'm going to change my mind. If you show me facts that that demonstrate I'm wrong, I'm going to listen to everybody.
Yes.
I just listen to Crystal pile it on me, right?
Yeah.
But, this is what we should be doing.
we agree. This is your third round here. You know what you're getting into.
I mean, we should have open, spirited, congenial, respectful debate. And about this stuff. And if people don't like where I end up on things, and I'm going to tell you why I end up. I'm going to show you that I've been thoughtful about it. That I'm not, I'm not acting in a knee-jerk way or a political way. I'm not doing anything from ideology. I'm free of that. But I may still end up in a different place than you. And in that case, you have your choice about whether you want the whole package.
Okay.
Which is somebody who I'm going to fight harder. With this generation, the people who are between 20 and 35, I'm narrowly focused on making sure they can get in homes, that they can, have a decent economy, that the American dream is real for them. Mm-hmm. And I'm going to work every day in my presidency on that. And I may fall on different plays. There's people who support the Ukraine war, which I'm, as you know, adamantly against.
Yes, you have been.
And but they also support me. There's people who support. I have support from people who are vaccinated, unvaccinated. I have support from people who are pro-life and pro-choice. And but if you have just one issue and I'm wrong on it, I get it, and I respect you for that.
Yeah.
That's how it's supposed to work.
Great.
I have one last wrap-up free speech question for you, and we'll move on to some other issues. But on X, formerly Twitter, Elon Musk decided to ban the word decolonization and also the phrase "from the river to the sea." In the whole flap about the university presidents, there wasn't actually any example, at least not one offered, of people saying genocide the Jews. They were talking about a chant, "From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free." And they also brought up a call for globalizing the Intifada. Do you think that those things are incitements to violence? Do you support their banning on Twitter? Do you support their banning on college campuses? Just on those specific examples.
Elon Musk owns
so you can
Twitter.
clarify.
He spent a lot of billions of dollars on it, and he's lost a lot of sense. And I utterly respect him for what he's done for standing up for free speech, but it's his platform. He has, just like you don't have to allow me on here or anybody else. It's up to you. You're not.
It's not a question of whether he can. It's a question of whether
but
he should when it's
it only
supposed to be a free
becomes
speech
censorship.
platform.
It only becomes censorship when the government is ordering it. I mean, it only implicates the First Amendment.
Yeah.
When the government is telling you to do that. Otherwise, if you own a printing press, you can print who you want and you can deny who you want, and he owns the big printing press.
I gotta stick with this though, because I don't understand. I mean, you were at one point probably one of the most censored men in America, and you often talked about Instagram. I remember you were banned from Instagram. At certain points on YouTube, and tremendously difficult to even feature any of your videos. To even I remember having to do research. I had to go on Rumble or somewhere else in order to listen to what you said. How do you square that position? I mean, given the way that during the COVID vaccine debate, the way that your views were censored throughout all of this, how do you square the idea that corporations can be able to do whatever they want?
Well, there's a couple of issues here. One is if the government is involved in the censorship, which they were involved in my censorship, the Biden administration was, and then members of the Trump administration, although not directly the White House, were collaborating with the social media and media sites to censor me. So that's First Amendment.
Okay.
That's a straight violation. There's another kind of censorship, which is corporate censorship, so that you probably get pharmaceutical
all the time.
Advertising.
Well, we do not actually.
That's good.
Right.
But CNN does,
Yes.
and ABC and NBC get it. Roger Ailes told me that for Fox, the evening news, it was 70% of the revenues for evening news. And so the pharmaceutical industry actually controls content on those platforms. And it is telling you, it is forcing those announcers to edit what they say and not tell the public things that might affect their mercantile ambitions, their commercial, ambitions of companies. So that is a corporate censorship. And I would argue that that's illegal when it happens on a public airwave because the networks do not own the airwaves. The networks are licensed to use them, but they're owned by the American public, and they have to use them for a public purpose. If you have your own printing press in your basement, or if you're the Sulzberger family and you own the New York Times, or if you're Elon Musk and you don't, and you're willing to say, I don't care what advertisers say, and you have a right to have on your platform who you want and who you don't. The thing I complained about was commercial censorship, where I was being censored on the government-owned airwaves because of pharmaceutical advertising, and number two, government-dictated censorship.
So you're okay with if on Twitter or on Instagram, if Zuckerberg or Musk or whoever the billionaire that owns the platform wants to censor certain views, they're entitled to.
At their behest, not the government's behest.
I think if the government's not involved, sadly, that's the way the world works.
All right.
And there's a the alternative to that is to declare Twitter or Instagram a public utility.
Are you open to that?
I don't think it would work because I think the reason that those platforms work is because of the commercial incentives.
What about fair game
because you
rules?
constantly have to upgrade the performance to compete with all the other people, and that's why they're successful.
What about a standard? If we say that all censorship has to abide within the First Amendment at all social media, you can operate however you want. It's just that in terms of censorship, removal of content.
Well,
We're not necessarily
here's what I
promotional.
would do as president.
Yeah.
Okay, and I'll do this the day that I go in, is I will issue an executive order saying that no federally paid official can collaborate with any media or social media company in censoring political speech.
Okay.
Okay.
Excellent.
I wanted to ask you about your position on abortion. You got asked a question on the trail. I think it was Ali Vitale of NBC News. If you would sign a 15-week abortion ban, you seemed to indicate you did, and the campaign said you misunderstood the question. So I just wanted you to clarify your stance. Is there any national restriction on abortion that you would support as president of the United States if that ended up on your desk?
No, I think every abortion is a tragedy. But I've probably fought as hard as anybody in this country for medical freedom and for people to have autonomy over their own bodies. And I understand also that there's a countervailing interest, the interest that, the unborn baby get a cruise at some rate or, in some people's views immediately.
Yes.
I respect people who believe that, and I don't think anything is a satisfactory solution. But I think ultimately we have to trust the moms. We have to trust women. But I will. I'm not gonna deride or or ridicule people who believe that life starts at inception and have devoted their lives to
Sure.
protecting that, and I think they should be heard. I have people in my family that I grew up with that who I was very close to had that notion. I understand it, and we all can respect each other.
So
Understood.
let's go ahead and put this next element up on the screen. You mentioned, medical freedom being something that's always been very important to you, at least, and for the past number of years. I'm sure you saw probably this story, which was in the news everywhere, this mom of two who the Texas Supreme Court ruled she could not seek an abortion even though her fetus was diagnosed with, a condition that means that it cannot live outside of the womb. It was causing serious health problems for her. She had to leave the state in order to seek the abortion for her health condition. And so obviously there's already been a huge rollback in terms of women's rights after the overturning of Roe versus Wade. Is there anything you would do under a Kennedy administration to try to restore those rights in the states where the procedure has been all but banned?
I mean, what's President Biden doing?
Nothing.
Nothing, as far as we.
That's why I wonder if you're going to be different. That's the question.
What are your ideas?
Well, I mean, one idea is to try to eliminate the filibuster in order to secure, enshrining Roe versus Wade as the law of the land, which is something that's been floated for a lot of years.
Yeah, I would not end the filibuster. I think those kind of procedural tampering with these long-standing democratic institutions in Congress then get turned against you on the next term.
Would you, though, want to, if you had a 60-vote majority in order to
I
enshrine
think
Roe
women
versus
should
Wade,
have
would
a
you?
right to choose.
Okay.
So you would support it at the federal level, theoretically?
I think women, I think we have to trust the moms.
I have a question on housing. I know this is something that you referenced to. This is actually one of the areas that I've seen you get a lot of attention on. This plan, I believe it is to give all homeowners or the first-time homebuyers a 3% mortgage. Could you lay that out? We see a tremendous amount of interest from our audience on housing, about the ability to buy, and just your views both on the housing market and your plan in order to make it more affordable.
Yeah, I mean, we're looking at a whole lot of different issues. I'm very focused on making sure this generation, the 20s and 30-year-olds can get into homes. So, one of the ways that my uncle did it, and I actually was in an apartment building in Tampa a couple days ago. That's one of his buildings, and it's a special class of mortgages that he created at 3% interest and funded with treasury bills that were sold at 3%, but with tax deductions. So he was able to finance that with the market. And this apartment building has, I think it had 83 apartments in it that are being rented. The highest one's about $270 a month, and then even lower if you can't afford it. And it's this is 60 years later. Oh, that's one of the issues. I'm also, there's a number of other things we can do. There's a $100 billion surplus that's supposed to be used for housing in Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac, $110 billion. And I'm going to unleash that and create housing stock. I have a panel of economic advisors, a wide range, and they're all focused on this, removing tax benefits to corporations that are using federal loans to buy houses, home equity loans, those kind of loans, and also supporting or creating legislation that will make it impossible or make it penalize with tax treatment the accumulation of single-family homes by large investment houses and hedge funds.
Got it.
Quickly, you got a VP shortlist?
I wouldn't talk about it, Crystal, as
Well,
much as I enjoy you.
Give us ideas.
Give me some
Yeah, we need some
criteria.
ideas.
Why
Type
don't
of
you
people
give
you're
me
looking
some?
at.
Oh, well.
Oh, Sean Fain of UAW. I put him at the top of my list
How
personally.
about Dana White?
Oh, that'd be interesting.
That would be interesting.
You would get a lot of
No
press.
comment on
Yeah,
that
it'd be
one.
good for
No
you.
comment.
What about Tucker
Is that?
Carlson?
I mean, is that a serious someone you're floating?
No, I just like him. But
Who are other people you like that flavor? Dana White, he's bombastic. He's got the FU attitude. Is that something you're looking for? Like, what is?
No, I'm looking for somebody maybe who's a little bit more healing.
Okay.
But I like Dana White.
All right. Okay, so I do have a question here I wanted to wrap on. You talked, this got a lot of attention, about flying on Epstein's plane twice. I know you clarified that. That was at a point in which you've since said you believe that he was trying to curry favor with your family. So do you?
Who, I don't remember saying that.
I saw it on your Twitter. So you followed up and said it's possible that he was
You saw
trying
that
to.
on my Twitter?
Yeah.
Oh,
Yes.
I don't know. I mean, I can tell you exactly what my relationship was with Jeffrey Epstein. I flew my wife, Mary Richardson, knew his girlfriend. I didn't know whether it was, I thought it was his wife at the time, but Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah.
And she got a ride. Ghislaine offered her a ride for our family to go to Palm Beach, where I wanted to visit my mother over Easter. Oh, I flew down with Mary and my two kids, with the two oldest kids. Mary was pregnant with Connor at the time, and then another time, that was in 1993. So nobody knew about Jeffrey Epstein's nefarious activities. The first hint the public was 2006.
Yes. After his conviction. Right.
Yeah. So so nobody knew about it. He was just another, wealthy guy in New York. And then I flew again sometime, maybe, probably about 1995 or 1996. I flew to South Dakota again with all my kids and Mary to do a fossil hunting trip with them. Now, I probably ran into Epstein at fundraisers and stuff, but I didn't know him socially. I didn't. He was not my friend.
Okay. My question is about well, I guess, I don't know if your staff put it out, but one of the things you'd surmise was about him currying favor. And there's been quite a few questions about whether he was a foreign intelligence asset, either for Israel, for the United States. Is that something, what do you think about that?
I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, I've read that he was, an agent for Mossad.
Yeah.
I don't know, I really haven't followed him that much. My kids, one of my kids follows him and said to me, that it's highly likely that he was murdered. But I wouldn't want to, I don't want to get involved in another conspiracy theory. 'Cause I know
Well, you
it goes all
declassify
that.
the Epstein files.
There we go.
You
There's the
declassify the
cue.
Epstein
Oh,
files.
I think everything. Look, everybody in his black books
Yeah.
should be. We should know those names.
Okay.
We should know. Declassify everything, subpoena everything, lay it out because, he was involved. I saw the documentary on him, and what they were doing was just horrific.
Oh yeah.
Oh, but I mean that was 13 years after I took that flight, and everybody. I have to say that. Well, I knew. I mean, I saw Harvey Weinstein Bill Cosby came to my house.
What was he
Go
like?
ahead and put it all out there.
And O.J. Simpson came to my house
Wow.
in the Cape a lot.
Yeah.
But nobody knew that they were, you know, rapists
Monsters.
and killers.
Yeah.
Right? They were
right.
just well-known people. And, you know, if you're living in New York and
Well, I need to hang out at
into
your house
people.
so I can meet some interesting people.
Yeah.
This is when I was a kid, you know,
Sure.
people came to my mom's house when, you know,
Yeah.
so, but you don't know who these people are until they get arrested.
Until you find out who
Your
they
team
really
tells us
are.
that you got to go, sir.
Bobby,
go
tell
ahead.
people where they can follow your
Yeah,
campaign
that's
and
right.
support you.
Please, thank you for that because I would have gotten in trouble. Kennedy24.com, and you know, if you're in a state that we're caught, there's about 15 states now where we can sign, where you can sign a petition to get me on the ballot. I need to get 1 million signatures, so go on. And if your state is not open yet, you can pledge there, and then we'll contact you when it
Yeah.
does open.
All right.
Well, listen, you and I have our differences of opinion, but I really encourage people to do that if you just believe in democracy, whether or not you intend on supporting your candidacy. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Thank you,
We appreciate
Crystal.
the time.
We
Thank you for
appreciate
that endorsement, Crystal.
Thank you for joining us, sir.
Take it how you will.
It's always a pleasure, and we look forward to seeing you again. So
Thank you.
appreciate you. And we will see you all later.
Hey guys, if you like that video, go to breakingpoints.com, become a premium subscriber, and help us build the best independent media organization on the planet.
That's right. We're subscriber funded. We're building something new. We want to replace these failing mainstream media organizations.
So again, to subscribe, it's breakingpoints.com.
You've talked about how the Department of Homeland Security denied you Secret Service protection. I'm just wondering, have you been able to employ any type of private security contractor or anything like that at this point?
Well, I'm not going to tell you my security arrangements for obvious reasons, but as far as we can tell, I'm the first candidate in history to be denied Secret Service protection on request. My uncle got Secret Service protection. Teddy got Secret Service protection 441 days out, and he wasn't even running. So President Carter, who he was running against, there was a great personal antipathy between them. And nevertheless, he provided him Secret Service protection. John McCain got it 551 days out. Obama got it 551 days out. Literally, Jesse Jackson, Shirley Chisholm, you go all the way back, John McCain. All of them were given Secret Service protection much farther out than I requested. The excuse that the White House has given that it's not available until 120 days out is just specious, it's dishonest, it's not true.
This will be the last question.
Do you think that E-15 blend should be allowed to be sold under law?
What?
E-15 ethical blend, do you think that should be allowed to be sold under your law?
I have to look at that.
Okay, one more question. Mr. Kennedy, what are your thoughts on the TNC not hosting a debate between you?
On the what?
What are your thoughts on the TNC not hosting a debate?
I'm the president.
What's DNC not hosting a debate?
Well, you know, like I said, I think we're living in a period of our history, and it's really important to convince the American public that the system is not rigged against them, that we have a real democracy in our country. And part of having a democracy is that the public actually, the rank and file of the Democratic Party, the public gets to pick the candidate. It's not picked by the party like they do in the Soviet, or they did in the Soviet Union. It should be picked by the people. And they're not, you know, the best way to pick them is to have debates, to have town halls, to do retail politics, to come out to places like this, to face the press, to face the public. Because otherwise, you know, we have politicians who are living inside of a bubble. And the only people they're talking to are the billionaires who are writing them checks. And we need, you know, we need people. I see what's happening in the American heartland. And I see the desperation, the mental illness, that we've never seen anything like this before, the epidemics of opioids firsthand. The epidemics of alcoholism and depression, of drug abuse, of the use of, you know, the absolute use of SSRIs, and the debt, you know, this extraordinary debt that Americans are being crushed by. And if you're not actually talking to people, going to kitchen tables, And talking to them, it's very easy for politicians to sit in a big mansion in Washington, D.C. and forget about the rest of the country. And I don't think that's good for our democracy.
Thank you, Mr. Kennedy. Thanks to all of you for being here. More information, Kennedy.
The whole process. But I guess first of all, that's illegal. It's immoral and unethical. You got to run as an independent.
Am I going to, at this moment,
If they jam you.
if they jam me, I'm going to look at every option. You know, in this state, the state is the template for democracy. This is one of the, between this state and Iowa, this is the only place where you really have to do retail politics. You have to come here, you have to meet people, you have to shake hands, you have to go to the nail salons, you have to go to the barber shops, you have to go to diners, you have to go to Roby's Market, you have to do all of these things that people do. All the other states in the country are content that, if they fly over at 30,000 feet and carpet bomb them with advertising that costs $1 billion that they've raised from billionaires, and then they drop in occasionally for a highly staged, highly orchestrated rally with a screened audience, and it's a kabuki theater of democracy. It's not real democracy. Here you got to do real democracy. You got to answer tough questions. From people like Scott Brown, you got to come to this barbecue. You got to face down the old lady in the diner who reads the Financial Times every week, the Economist, and is asking you the question, the follow-up question. And, you got to know the answers. And this is the only state where you have to do that. Where people do not make up their minds. They've seen the politicians again and again. It's really important. This is a gateway for democracy in this state, and it's really a tragedy that the Democratic Party, which has been fighting for voting rights, one man, one vote, one person, one vote, since I was a little boy, that was the principal thing that the Democratic Party stood for. And the Democratic Party today has made a decision that's going to disenfranchise all the people of New Hampshire and all the people of Iowa because they did not vote for President Biden last time around. And the charter of the Democratic Party says that the party must remain neutral in political campaigns. But 6 days after President Biden announced from his basement with a press release, not in real life, the DNC officially endorsed him and said, he is our guy, we are supporting him, we don't want anybody else to run. They're violating their own rules, and I'm going to work with them over the next couple of weeks and try to try to reinstate the commitment the party has to democracy. And I have to make a decision by October 15th. And I'll see what events occur between now and then.
Sir, I'm over here to your left. Your left. Really not to your left. I mean, probably to your right. Okay? That's a joke. No, to your left, really.
Mr. Kennedy. Very quickly, a couple of things that are disturbing me about some of the misinformation that's coming out from some of your rivals. As an example, DeSantis says that he's willing to use deadly force to stop the influx of drugs coming into the country. Tim Scott says he wants to build a wall, and if he builds the wall, that's going to be the end of the drug cartel. Well, let's face reality. The drugs are not coming into this country in the backpack, and people coming across the Rio Grande. They're coming in with the 1,800 trucks that come across the border every week in one checkpoint in Texas. They're coming through the cargo ships that are coming in from China into California. They're coming into anyway, I'm just not your opinion is what you feel is the way to control the drug problem that we have in this country.
Okay, there's two issues, and that's a good question. One is we need to control the border. We need to control the human influx from the border, which is a humanitarian tragedy. And I've been down there. I've run by the Mexican drug cartel. I watched in over 2 hours between 2 a.m. and 4 a.m. at a gap in the wall in Yuma, 300 people come across the border, and the cartels, each with 55 per bus load, driven, buses owned by the cartels. They each knew exactly what would happen to them because the drug cartels are advertising all over the world on TikTok and YouTube and saying, here's what you do, give us $15,000, we will get you into the United States, and they tell them each step along the way what to do. It's extraordinary. I expected that I'd see a lot of people from Latin America and Central America who were fleeing oppressive regimes or drug wars. I didn't. I saw only 2 families that night, one from Colombia and one from Peru, and they had legitimate asylum claims. None of the other people did. The first 120 were from West Africa, young men, military age. The second 120 were from Uzbekistan, Afghanistan, Kazakhstan, Azerbaijan, Tibet, Nepal, China, India. None of them said they had an asylum claim. They all said they were here to get jobs and make money. As soon as they crossed the Border Patrol processes them, and if they're not criminals, and they are brought to the Yuma airport, they're given an airplane ticket at our expense if they can't afford for it, to any destination they want in the United States. 7 million have come across in 3 years, and our legal immigration during that period was 3.1 million. The Mexican drug cartels are running U.S. immigration policy. 9 Border Patrol agents have committed suicide over the last year because they're not allowed to do their jobs. Those immigrants I interviewed them. They had been extorted, they had been exploited, they had been robbed, they had been one raped, and beaten. A Peruvian family had their entire life savings. I went to a rape center in Yuma that just treats people who were raped by the cartel, children and women. It is horrific. What's happening there is like nothing I've ever seen. The immigrants come across, they're given a court date with an asylum judge 7 years in the future. Wow. And then they're allowed to stay here for 7 years, but they have no legal status here. So what happens? They're exploited by unscrupulous employees who give them $6 or $7 an hour. At construction firms in New York, there's 110,000 landed in New York. They're crushing the social services in New York. Mayor Adams is now, who welcomed them at first and declared New York a silent city, now says New York is going to be destroyed. They're putting them in encampments on Randall's Island on the playing fields. The children in New York City were locked for 2.5 years so they couldn't play sports. Many of those kids were on scholarship trajectories. They weren't allowed to play their sports. Now they're finally out from COVID, and they can't play their sports because there's immigrants encamped on their fields. I worked with Cesar Chavez for the last 20 years of his life. I worked mainly on pesticide issues. He was my father's close political ally. Because of my work with him, when he died, his family honored me by asking me to be a pallbearer in his funeral. He had 2 great concerns during the last 20 years of his life. One of those concerns was pesticides, which dramatically and disproportionately impact Hispanic farm workers. The other concern was closing the border, because he saw that that influx of illegal immigrants were destroying his leverage to get good wages for his workers. And what you're seeing now in New York is the immigrants get a hold of Social Security cards, which is all you need to get a job. It's illegal to hire them. But they get a Social Security card, which is easy to fabricate, there's no picture on it. And they can go to any job site, and so the jobs that will hire them, the unscrupulous employers, are now they go bid that site for a lower price than the union workers, and the union workers are being exploited. So here's what I'm going to do. Number one, first of all, I spent 3 days talking to Border Patrol, local law enforcement, people on both sides of the hospital, to everybody. Every single person I talked to said this can be shut down overnight. The most difficult thing we need to do is we need to hire huge numbers of asylum judges to adjudicate at the border before people come in. And if they do not, if they're not covered with asylum, they shouldn't be allowed in. I'm going to do is something even more important. I'm going to immediately order and waive the payment for passport cards. So if you go, there's 33,000 post offices in this country. There's a lot of poor people in this country who do not have federal ID. They don't have picture ID, and they don't have access to it. Because the $65 for the passport card, they just can't afford it. And they don't have a driver's license. They live in a city, they don't have a car. They're elderly, they don't have a car. Those people are now second-class citizens. They can't get a bank account. They can't get on a plane. They can't get to a hotel. They can't see their kids at school. I'm going to make it so every American can immediately get a federal picture ID. This will do two things. One, it will clear up a lot of the anxieties on both sides about the integrity of our voting system. Because now you can I'm supported by Andrew Young, by Al Sharpton, by the civil rights leaders, who say, yeah, once we give everybody a photo ID, then we're okay with people demanding ID before you vote. And so the anxieties on both sides of those issues through a common sense solution can be eliminated. The other thing it will do is it will shut down the border overnight. Because now the employer has no excuse but to say, I will check their federal ID. And if he doesn't do it, he goes to jail. And as soon as that happens, not one person's going to come across that border. Because they know they're not going to get a job in the United States of America. That's why they're coming here. I talk to them. That's why it's so. I'm going to do that immediately as soon as I get in there. The other question you asked about fentanyl, with those guys, what DeSantis is saying, and with all due respect, Governor DeSantis, but it's just not true. Making war in Mexico, opening another war, is insanity. We need to have good relationships with the Mexican government. But, there's no way in the world, your point was perfect, you cannot block the fentanyl from coming into this country. Fentanyl is so minuscule, it's 1/200th the size of the opium molecule. And so you could load in one briefcase enough fentanyl to kill every citizen of Los Angeles. There is no way to keep that out of this country. What we need to do is another approach, which is not the drug war, but we need to start healing. And I have a proposal to do healing centers and detox centers all over this country too. We are and use that money to go rehabs in rural areas all over this country with the only industry today is prisons, but we're going to start healing farms where people come, grow organic crops, and kids can get their lives back and become part of the community and understand how to function in the community again. 6 months ago, I thought that an open border was a humanitarian policy, and that if you were for sealing the border, it meant that you were probably a xenophobe and maybe a racist. I was wrong. How did I learn I was wrong? It wasn't just that I listened. It wasn't just that I listened to the other side. It was when I actually visited the border and listened to people who weren't on either side. My views changed as I spoke to Border Patrol officers, to local officials, to local sheriffs, to aid workers, and to the migrants themselves. I saw that no one party has a monopoly on wisdom, and none of the simplistic narratives actually contain the whole truth. My promise to you as president is that I'm going to do this on every issue. I'm going to listen to the stakeholders. I'm going to listen to the stakeholders from every side and beyond any side. I'm going to uphold my moral convictions, of course, absolutely. But I'll hold my own opinions lightly. I'll look at the evidence and the arguments, and I'll choose not the easy path, not the established path, but the right path. in making an independent run for president, I take inspiration from the one other president who did not have a political party. And that president was George Washington. In his farewell address, Washington issued a prescient warning about the disastrous potential of party politics. Inevitably, he said, political parties will be taken over by a cunning, ambitious, unprincipled minority who will serve the interests of the party rather than the interests of the nation and usurp for themselves the reins of government. Washington's dire prediction has certainly come true. I intend to wrest the reins of both parties and return power to the American people. Now you know, you've all heard the pundits who say, who have been lamenting, how do we get young people to engage again in politics? I see so many young people who have now inflamed with my campaign. And the answer to that question is that that's the wrong question to ask. The problem I found is not the young people. The problem is what my generation, the old people, have done to politics. The millennials and Gen Z are repelled by the toxicity, the pettiness, and more than anything else, by the dishonesty. They want authenticity. Oh no, the problem is the politics. I'm committed to inaugurating a politics that is worthy of their engagement. I want to share with you a hopeful sign. I'm proud to say that my supporters include both pro-lifers and pro-choicers. They include climate activists and climate skeptics. They include vaccinated and unvaccinated. They include people who for years have been on both sides of the culture war. Why? Because more and more Americans are beginning to understand that for the good of our country, one cannot insist on getting one's way on every issue. They understand that people can disagree and still respect each other. You can be pro-choice and not think that pro-lifers are women-hating zealots. You can support the Second Amendment and not think that gun control advocates are totalitarians who hate freedom. This is what I mean from independence. It's more than being independent of two existing parties. It's also independence from tribal thinking. It's freedom from the reflex of having to take sides. Instead of asking people, which side are you on? I'm going to ask people, what do you care about? What do your children need? What is it like to be you? What do you love? Because our country is never going to heal if the formula, the only formula, is for one half of the population to vanquish the other half in a pitched battle. I haven't made this decision lightly. It's very painful for me to let go of the party of my uncles, my father, my grandfather, and both of my great-grandfathers, Honey Fitzgerald, and Patrick, who was the first Irish Catholic ghetto mayor of Boston, and Patrick Kennedy, who was a ward boss in Boston. Both of them launched our political dynasty over 100 years ago. But my sacrifice is nothing compared to the risk our founding fathers took when they signed the Declaration of Independence 247 years ago. They knew that if their revolution failed, every last one of them would be hanged. They chose to place everything on the line. When John Adams put his pen down after adding his signature to the Declaration, he turned to those present and he said to them, sink or swim, live or die, survive or perish. From this day on, I am with my country. I'm going to make that same pledge to you today, so that I can stand before you, as every leader should stand before you, free of partisan allegiance, free from the backroom deals, servant only to my conscience, to my Creator, and to you. Today we turn a new page in American politics. There have been independent candidates in this country before, but this time it's going to be different. Because this time, the independent is going to win. There's no other explanation for the enthusiasm I see every day as more and more people flock to this campaign. Sometimes it gives me goosebumps. Their minds may tell them that the situation is hopeless, that the elites are too entrenched, that the corruption is too deep. But their hearts say otherwise. I know that because I meet scores of people every day, even those in the most difficult circumstances, who have not given up on America. I've walked picket lines in Los Angeles with hotel workers who live in their cars because they can't afford rent. I visited mobile health clinics in the back routes and roads of Georgia, where families get their medical care in the back of the bus. I've planted gardens in the food deserts in Watts and Cleveland. I've sat amongst migrant children at the border. I've met social workers and doctors in Yuma who treat these immigrants with kindness and heartbreaking generosity as if they were members of their own families. I've walked the fields with farmers in Kansas who can't drink from their own wells because they're poisoned by pesticides. These are members of the dispossessed now. I've sat at kitchen tables in Pennsylvania with parents working every hour that God gives them to afford a home of their own, only to get outbid by a hedge fund with a cash offer at the last minute. I've worked with veterans who serve honorably in foreign wars and come home then to a country that is bankrupted by those wars. I've eaten with small business owners who had to board up their dreams as Amazon cashed in. I've talked from moms from Nevada to New Hampshire who lie awake at home juggling unpayable bills, choosing between gasoline and groceries. I met senior citizens who cut their pills in two to stretch out their prescriptions. And I pulled dead fish from rivers that are clogged with chemical runoff and waste. And I've read stories to children who are devastated by chronic disease. It can all look pretty dark. We seem to be cycling from despair to rage and back to despair again. The country is sitting on top now of a powder keg. Americans are angry at being left out, left behind, swindled, cheated, and belittled by a smug elite that has rigged the system in its favor. Seen hope. I've traveled millions of American miles across my career. And to quote Tennyson, I am part of all whom I have met. For 40 years, Americans across the country have fortified me with their courage and their idealism. But this year, I have witnessed an upwelling of optimism that I've never seen before. And optimism isn't the same thing as denial. We have to acknowledge the truth. We do face a decaying infrastructure and record levels of suicide, depression, addiction, chronic disease. We do face an entrenched political corruption and an inequality of wealth not seen in a century. But the good news is that people like yourselves are finally fed up. Something is stirring in us that says it doesn't have to be this way. People stop me everywhere at airports, at hotels and malls, on the street, and they remind me that this country is ready for a history-making change. They are ready to reclaim their freedom, their independence. And that's why I'm here today. I'm here to declare myself an independent candidate candidate for President of the United States. People ask me, can you win? And I want to turn that question back on you. Will our movement win? Can this movement restore democracy, health, prosperity, and freedom? I'm not asking you to make a prediction. I'm asking you to make a choice. It's going to happen if you choose for it to happen. Democracy doesn't come about as a gift from oppressive elites and authorities when they finally relent. Democracy comes when people choose to exercise their power. And so I'm asking you today to join me in exercising the sovereign choice of a democratic people. Are we ready to win? Are we ready to win? And that's what a new Declaration of Independence sounds like. Remember this moment. We have a year and 1 month until the election. Let's go take back our country. God bless you, and God bless the United States of America. And I'm going to tell you that because of that, it's going to be very hard for people to tell whether my administration is left or right. Is it right-wing to support small farms? Is it right or left to pull our nation back from the brink of a war with Russia? Is it right or left to implement a tamper-proof election system that also guarantees that everyone has a right to vote? You know, as long as we're locked in these habitual debates, the two parties are often blind to common sense solutions. The formula has left them unable to govern. Practically every year we do what we did 2 weeks ago or a week ago, which is to come this far from defaulting on a government shutdown. And that's just the most obvious example of the paralysis of the two-party system. The system runs on inertia, year after year, decade after decade. It's like a runaway bus filled with teenagers fighting about who should take the wheel, and they ultimately learn that whoever the driver is, they're all obeying a GPS with a program that's written by lobbyists and corrupt corporate insiders. So I'm not going to just take the wheel. I'm going to reboot the GPS. And you know who's going to set the new destination? You are. Yeah. Because as I've traveled this country, I've listened to you, and I know what your hopes are for the future, and I know your idealism. And together we're going to set the GPS toward the promised land, the promise that Jonathan Winthrop gave us, the great Puritan leader in 1630, when he stood on the deck of the sloop Arbella and said and pointed to the verdant landscapes that no European had ever seen. And he said, we're going to build here a promised land, a city on a hill, a lamp to all the other nations in the world, an exemplary nation. And we came close to fulfilling that destiny in the years after World War II. You know, when the king and queen look over the balustrades of their castle and they see all of their subjects fighting each other, they go back to the banquet room and they pop champagne corks, as they know as long as we're all feuding with each other, then nobody's coming over the castle walls. So this hatred we have for each other is orchestrated. And what my job is during this campaign and then during my presidency is to unify Americans. And then we're all going to go over the castle wall together. Now, the media pundits are going to tell you that we don't have any chance. They've given me a couple of first names. One of them is Longshot Kennedy. And they say my impact is only going to draw votes from the other candidates. The Democrats are frightened that I'm going to spoil the election for President Biden. And the Republicans are frightened that I'm going to spoil it for President Trump. The truth is, they're both right. My intention is to spoil it for both of them. And only that inside the Beltway myopia deludes them into thinking that we have no chance of winning. I have seen the polls that they won't show you. I've sat at the kitchen tables that they don't bother to visit. I've shaken hands with tens of thousands of invigorated Americans over the past 6 months who are excited about a change. And I can tell you, our campaign has ignited a movement that has been smoldering for years, a movement to reclaim democracy, to resurrect the promise of our republic, the promised land. And that's the real reason that the party elites in Washington and the insiders are terrified of my candidacy. They recognize an authentic challenge to their power when they see one. There have been anti-establishment candidates before, but none of them who understands actually how to get the job done. Unlike President Trump, I've been fighting corporate corruption and suing government agencies for 40 years. I know how they work, and I know how to clean them up. And unlike any president since 1963, I will stand up to the military-industrial complex. I will cash in the peace dividend, and I'll bring our troops home with honor. I'll rebuild America's strength from the inside out. What really terrifies the elites, though, is not me. It's what I represent, a populist movement that defies left-right division.
I am merely the bowsprit of a ship that is going to cut through the armadas of corruption, of secrecy, of lies. And except for the small minority of public officials who are actually corrupt, I'm going to tell you this secret. I am no enemy to the people of the two-party establishment, because guess what? They don't believe in it anymore either. They don't believe their own posturing. They don't believe their own rhetoric. That's why so many public figures, Democrats and Republicans, have told me quietly, I can't support you publicly, but I really hope you win. They do want liberation from the system that has captured them. And isn't that ultimately what we all want? Liberation from a system that robs us of our wealth, our health, our hope, our patriotism, our ideals, our freedoms, and ultimately our sense of ourselves as a good and capable people. 3/4 of Americans believe that President Biden is too old to govern effectively. President Trump faces multiple civil and criminal trials. Both of them have favorability ratings that are deep in negative territory. That's what two-party politics has given us. And that's why we need to pry loose from the hammerlock of the corrupt powers in Washington, D.C., and make this nation ours again. But there's a sacrifice that everyone, including myself, have to make if we're going to reunite America. We're going to have to surrender the kind of political addiction that is ultimately at the root of all of these divisions. And that's the addiction to taking sides. Our nation's renewal is going to begin when we start to treat each other with respect. Only then will we be able to step outside our tired, stuck debates. We can ask the questions then that nobody thought to ask. We can discover solutions that were right in front of our face. We will listen not just to the other side, but to those who are apart from any side. In a two-sided conflict, both parties have a kind of mutual dependency. Each side depends on the other to define themselves as good guys, in contrast to the other side, who of course are the bad guys. Well, if you're a team good, then you'll do anything, no matter how unscrupulous, to defeat team evil. And that's why we've seen both parties sacrificing their core values and the foundational canons of democracy in an all-out struggle for power. In a war against evil, any means justifies the end. The result is that we ourselves become evil if we participate in that battle. The child who is obsessed with hating a parent becomes that parent. As I've surrendered my attachment to taking sides over the past 6 months, I've been able to listen with new ears to people with whom I disagree and to see solutions that would otherwise have been invisible. Moses, during the end of his life, he had brought the Jewish people from slavery in Egypt across the Red Sea, promising them they would get to a promised land. But 40 years later, he was 120 years old, and they had not found the promised land. And the Jewish people were angry at him, and they said to him, "Why did you bring us out of Egypt? We were better off in Egypt." He went to God, Moses went to God and said they're going to stone me. And God took him up to the top of the mountain, and he let him look over the river Jordan. And he showed him the land of Canaan, the promised land. And he said, "You can't lead them there. They need to get there on their own, but you've brought them up to the edge. But the people need to get there on their own." And he warned them, they can't waver from left or the right. They have to go forward. Martin Luther King, the night before he died,
recalled that without mentioning the story. But he said to the people, I've been to the mountaintop. I've seen the promised land. I know what it looks like. And I may not get there with you, but you're going to get there. But you have to get there yourselves. The people have to decide to take back the power in this country. And I, of course, am no Moses or no Martin Luther King, but I am part of a movement where we are determined as the American people to go back and reach that promised land again. And I do know what it looks like because I've had glimpses of it during my lifetime. I know it's an America with a prosperous middle class where if you work hard, if you play by the rules, you can finance a home, you can raise a family, you can take a summer vacation, you can put something aside for your retirement. I know that it's a place where we don't have to choose between economic prosperity and environmental protection. I know it's a place where our children will have the same opportunities for dignity and enrichment and prosperity and good health as the communities that our parents gave us. I know it's a place where every American enjoys the right to vote and everybody has absolute faith that our electoral system has integrity and it's the best in the world. I know it's a place with incorruptible regulatory agencies. When I was a kid, the FDA, the CIA, or the FDA, the EPA, the NIH were the gold standard regulatory agencies in the world. The other nations in Europe and Latin America based their regulations on what our regulatory agencies said. They were absolutely incorruptible. They were gold standard science. I know that that promised land is a place which is a bastion for the rights that are enshrined in our Constitution. And I know that that promised land is a place where America is a moral authority around the world, and people look to us for leadership, and it's a place that promotes peace instead of war. And I know that America is possible when we declare independence from the deadlocked party establishment. That is the America that's possible when we declare independence from the war machine that devours $1 trillion a year. That's the America that is only possible when we stop fighting each other and go over the fortress wall. And that's the America that I'm going to serve when I become President of the United States. I'm here to join you in making a new Declaration of Independence for our entire nation. We declare independence from the corporations that have hijacked our government. And we declare independence from Wall Street, from big tech, from big pharma, from big ag, from the military contractors and their lobbyists. And we declare independence from the mercenary media that is here to fortify all of the corporate orthodoxies from their advertisers and to urge us to hate our neighbors and to fear our friends. And we declare independence from the cynical elites who betray our hope and who amplify our divisions. And finally, we declare independence from the two political parties. And the corrupt interests that dominate them and the entire rigged system of rancor, of rage, of corruption, of lies that has turned government officials into indentured servants for their corporate bosses. We declare independence from these corrupting powers because they are incompatible with the inalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that the people who sat in that hallway ratified for us in 1776, 1787. Now we can guard life. How can we guard life when the for-profit corporations have captured the public agencies that are supposed to protect us? How can we enjoy liberty when a surveillance state seeks to hide the truth and to quash dissent? And how can we pursue happiness when debt and low wages imprison so many of our nation's families? And so I've come here today to declare our independence from the tyranny of corruption, which robs us of affordable lives, our belief in the future, and our respect for each other. But to do that, I must first declare my own independence. Independence from the Democratic Party, and from all other political parties. But today, as the corrupt powers have overtaken our government, the ranks of the dispossessed have swelled so that they not only include indigenous Americans and Black Americans and Hispanic Americans, they include tens of millions of people who live paycheck to paycheck in financial desperation. The dispossessed also include the legions of the chronically ill, of the addicted, the depressed, the 80% of our country that cannot afford a middle-class lifestyle. A rising tide of discontent is now swamping our country. There's danger in this discontent, but there's also opportunity and promise. The danger is that the demagogues will hijack it toward fascism, or that our rulers would divert us to use it as a pretense for an attack on an existential enemy, and another in the long pipelines of continuous wars. The biggest danger that we've all seen on a day-to-day basis is that they'll direct that discontent against each other. As Abraham Lincoln observed, quoting Jesus Christ, "A house divided cannot stand." A polarized nation is easy for corrupt powers to manipulate and to control and to strip the wealth, its freedoms, its equity, its dignity. Those are the dangers. So what is the promise? The promise is of reunion. We are told today that our nation is hopelessly divided. But I found something different as I travel this country. The most hateful voices, of course, are always the loudest. But there are a lot of quiet Americans who are looking at disgust without the vitriol, the name-calling, and the venom. They want it to end. They want us to get along. They want to end. And you know, those loud, hateful controversies obscure these vast areas of agreement. Most of us agree, for example, that we should take care of our veterans. Most of us agree that we should seek peace abroad instead of war. We all agree that teachers should receive decent salaries and respect. We all agree that housing should be affordable and that corporations should pay their fair share. We all agree that we want a clean environment, that we want wholesome communities for our children. And yet these universal yearnings stand alongside a broad agreement that our country has lost its way. Americans are weary, they're tired of the culture war, the phony slogans, the politicians who use the partisan blame game to divide us against each other and keep us all at each other's throats. And people suspect that the divisions are deliberately orchestrated, and that getting us to hate each other is all part of the scam.
Okay, one more time. I just want to hear it one more time. Are you really ready for Bobby Kennedy? Okay. All right, listen. I know you didn't come here to hear me talk. I thank you. One person. Oh, two people. Thank you. I am not going to wait. I'm not going to make you wait any longer. The moment you've been waiting for, we're all dying to hear from Bobby. So why don't you please make a lot of noise and welcome the next president of the United States of America, Robert Kennedy Jr.
Thank you, Cheryl Hines. Hey. I need my speech. You can't read anything. You can't read anything. What? And every morning before court, I would go to the gym in Union Square. And Union Square in San Francisco is like Fifth Avenue in New York. It's where all of the big flagship stores are for the American brands like Nordstrom's and Bloomingdale's and Macy's and Gap and Old Navy and Levi, and all the big foreign brands like Gap, like Gucci and De La Valle and Prada and Burberry and Ferragamo, and all of these giant stores there. When I went back a month ago, all of those stores were closed. Oh, it's just acre after acre of plywood. It's like as if all of Fifth Avenue shut down. People come from all over the world to shop there, and it's gone. The economic heart of that city has been torn out. And it was such a traumatic experience for me seeing this. I love San Francisco. It's the most beautiful city in our country. It's my favorite city. And so I started studying homelessness because I didn't know much about it. So I started reading the books. My son, Connor, who's 28 years old and just graduated law school, he turned me on to a writer called Matthew Desmond. And Matthew Desmond has written a seminal work on homelessness, which is called Evicted. It's a best-selling book. But he's done all of these studies, and he did them with the University of San Francisco. And he went out and actually interviewed with this big team from the University of San Francisco. He interviewed thousands of homeless in San Francisco, and he gave questionnaires to them. And when I approached this issue, I came in with a series of assumptions and biases. And one of those was that homelessness was a feature ultimately of drug addiction. I also thought it's also linked to mental illness and to extreme poverty. And also I assumed that a lot of the people who were homeless in San Francisco had gone homeless somewhere else, like Detroit or New York, and they didn't want to sleep in the snowstorm on the grates. So they moved, they use their last couple of bucks and take a bus to San Francisco. And San Francisco is, of course, a better climate, but also a famously generous social service system. I'd also heard from many people in San Francisco that police in towns like Austin and Dallas, when they arrest a homeless person, when they pick them up, instead of bringing them to the county jail, they put them on a Greyhound to San Francisco with a one-way ticket. A lot of people in San Francisco believe that. So what Desmond's study shows is that the people who are homeless in San Francisco are from San Francisco overwhelmingly. So they didn't come from somewhere else. He also shows that there's parts of this country like West Virginia and Detroit which have much higher levels of drug addiction, but they don't have homelessness problems. And he also, and they also have much higher levels of poverty. San Francisco is the wealthiest city in our country. He also shows that, yes, many people who are homeless are mentally ill, but overwhelmingly they became mentally ill after they became homeless. He shows that after only 3 days on the sidewalk, your psyche begins to deteriorate, to disintegrate. And what he says, and he shows with data, is that the one correlation to homelessness is housing prices. And California has the highest housing prices in the country. And what Desmond says is that this epidemic that we see of homelessness in San Francisco is building like a tsunami and is about to roll across our country and bring the same level of homelessness, but also the same levels of disintegration. The reason all these places shut down is because of the chaos on the street, because people don't want to shop there anymore because there's these homeless encampments everywhere. And that same phenomena is about to happen to the rest of the country because the price of housing is skyrocketing. And, so I know that I can fix it, and I can fix it fast. But I can't do it alone. I need an army. I need your help, and particularly, I need your help now getting on the ballot in each state. The Democratic and Republican parties are going to try to prevent me from getting on the ballot. We have 250,000 volunteers now. We are getting bigger crowds than any of the other presidential candidate, with the exception of Donald Trump. And we are already way ahead of our metrics for getting on the ballot in the states where we are legally permitted to go after them. States like Maryland, we're double where we're supposed to be at this time. So I know we can do it, but we need a lot of help, and we need you to do it. And so I'm asking you to sign up tonight. Make sure that you sign a petition for ballot access. And if you're willing to help us on this, on getting ballots in Georgia and South Carolina, please sign up tonight. And I want to ask you to do something else. One of the reasons that I do so well with young people is that, of people under 45, is that people under 45 are not getting their news from the mainstream media. I honestly don't know if my children have ever seen an evening news broadcast. And they're very well informed, but they get their money, they get their information from what we used to call unconventional sources. They get it from listening to podcasts, and they get it from social media and a lot of alternative media. So, and that's why I'm doing so well in those groups. And independents who are critical thinkers do the same thing, because they're looking at unconventional sources of information. But if the only source of information that you have is MSNBC, CNN, and the New York Times, well, if I was living in that information bubble, I would have a very low opinion of myself. Because you're not going to hear anything good about me in any of that. You're going to hear a lot of defamations, a lot of mischaracterizations, and a lot of things that just aren't true. And what we find is that when we can convince those people to watch a podcast, to watch Joe Rogan's, Jordan Peterson, to watch me on it, to watch Tucker Carlson, to watch Aubrey Marcus, or one of those long-form interviews, that they have a very, very high and very quick conversion rate. And people say, oh, He doesn't have horns and a tail. He actually sounds like he's common sense. So what we need to do over the next 12 months is get a critical mass of those baby boomers to watch those podcasts and to look at other forms of information, which there's this kind of tribal religious orthodoxy that says if you even suggest, an alternative, that you're a dangerous person. We have to break through to those people. And so what I'm asking you to do is to go to wear some of our merch. There's these guys out here who are selling great merch. We don't make any money from them. I wish we had that idea, but it's really good merch that they have. Or get it from our campaign. Go on the Kennedy 24 website, wear a button, wear a cap, wear a shirt, a t-shirt, or a sweatshirt. Put a bumper sticker on your car. Pick up tonight a lawn sign and give my campaign visibility. And then what's going to happen is most people who are wearing the merch will tell you is that you get a lot of thumbs up and a lot of hide signs. And occasionally, maybe once a day, somebody comes up and says, "Why are you for him? Isn't he crazy?" And you can say to them, just look at 10 minutes of this video. And the conversion rate is enormous. We need people to go out from each one of these rallies, and if you believe in this campaign, if you want to be part of the Army, the uniform is wear something or display something and engage people and try to convince them to look at other sources. And we only need to get a few of those baby boomers, 15 or 20%, and we win. So I'm asking all you energetic young people, stand up for your generation. Let's, I want to give you back the American dream. If you elect me president, I'm going to make you my priority. You're going to get back your country. You're riding through a bad neighborhood. Well, that's how half of America is waking up every day, with that sense of impending doom and not seeing how there could possibly be a good ending. And this is not the way that, young people are supposed to be viewing their prospects. My kids are worried about, they don't think about even buying a house. They're worried about their college debt. Our generation told them, you got to go to college. And now they've come out of college and the jobs are not enough to run their lives, much less pay that debt that's landed on them. Oh, it's been a betrayal of this generation. And you remember, the other thing is about this generation lived through the COVID pandemic. And they had to make the sacrifice for the older people. That's what they were told. That they had to have, they had to homeschool. They missed that experience. We're seeing this generation of kids that all need remedial education. They didn't get that experience, and then we closed down 3.3 million businesses without any due process, with no scientific citation, with no notice and comment rulemaking, no environmental impact statement, all the things that government is supposed to do before it asks us to make a sacrifice. None of that happened. Democracy was just one guy, a 50-year bureaucrat who never won an election, who just said, everybody shut down your houses, and 2 presidents went along with him and got rolled by a bureaucracy. They never said to him, show me a scientific study that justifies this. And Amazon, who I'm suing right now, Amazon, I'm suing them and Elizabeth Warren because she told them to censor a book that I had written with, not my Fauci book, but another book that I wrote with Joe Mercola. That was critical of the lockdowns. And so Amazon censored it. And Amazon was the one business that they didn't close, right? We all got a 3-year lesson, and Amazon got to help close down all of its competitors. And we got a 3-year lesson in how to use Amazon. Oh, I didn't know how to use Amazon before the pandemic. And by the way, it's a magical experience. It's like, you just find a picture of something that you like and you hit send and it's in your driveway in 24 hours. Oh, but what happened? We closed down all these businesses. 41% of black-owned businesses will never reopen. And, that convenience was seductive, but there was a cost to it that we're paying now as a nation, which is we closed down all the local retailers. The people in this, I'm sure all of you know somebody who closed the business, won't reopen. They were paying local taxes here. They were the people who had the plaque of gratitude on their wall from the local Boy Scout troop. They were the people who paid for my kids' hockey jerseys. They paid for their Little League uniforms. The money we were giving them was more than I give for the same product from Amazon, but that money was staying in our community and recirculating and making it, enriching us all. And that guy is gone today. But Amazon, at least, they're paying local taxes here, right? No, they're not. But at least they're paying federal taxes, right? Right. Last year, they paid 0. So like I said, they're doing it right in front of us. They are strip mining the wealth and the equity from our nation, from the middle class. During the lockdowns, we shifted $4 trillion north from the American middle class to this new oligarchy of billionaires. We created 500 new billionaires, a billionaire a day in 500 days of lockdown. And we destroyed the American middle class and the prospects for our children. I'm really happy to be here in Utah. We had to change locations 2 times because the crowd kept getting so big. So I'm really just, I'm overjoyed to see. And I love coming to Utah. I've been coming here. The first time when I was 10 years old, my dad brought us all, 10 of us, to the state to run the Yampa and the Green. And I've come back here to do whitewater kayaking, to do climbing, to do skiing almost every year. My son Finn went to winter sports school, so he was, his high school was here up in Park City, and I got to come out and visit him a lot. I love this state. It's got the best skiing in the world, the best snow in the world. We all know that. And I don't just say that when I'm in Utah. I say that when I'm in Colorado and everywhere else. And Governor Walker just told me that we're going to get the Olympics here in 2034. I'm very happy about that, too. And I will be here for that, God willing. I'm very, very proud of Amaryllis, who is not only the campaign manager, but my daughter-in-law, and has had an incredible career serving our country and has devoted herself and her life's energy to ending the warfare state and the war machine. And I'm very, very proud of her. I was in San Francisco last month, and I was in, I spent almost a year, I spent the better part of a year in San Francisco in 2019, 2019, trying the Monsanto cases. So we had about 2,200 cases, mainly of home gardeners, who had gotten non-Hodgkin's lymphoma from using Roundup. And the way the multi-district litigation works, there was a lot of other firms, about 4 other firms that also had their own cases. You consolidate all those cases and then you try them one at a time, usually in front of the same judge, although we switched judges, but we were trying them one at a time. We tried the first 3, the first one. Hello? By the way, if you can't hear me, because if I let me move back. If I drop this microphone so that you can't hear me, please raise your hand and it'll remind me to put it closer to my mouth. Can you guys hear me? Anyway, the first case, we won $289 million from the jury. The second case, we won $89 million. And the last case, we asked for $1 billion from the jury. It was a couple. They and their Labrador Retriever had they were spraying in the garden every day, and they'd take the dog with them. The husband and wife both got non-Hodgkin's lymphoma at the exact same time, and the dog got it the same time the dog died. We asked the jury for $1 billion, and they came back with $2.2 billion. And that's when Monsanto came to the table, and we ended up negotiating settlements for all the cases. Monsanto took glyphosate out of Roundup for home gardening. It's still on our food crops, and still farm workers are still being exposed. But home gardeners are not. But I spent a large part of that year in San Francisco, and every morning, I'm being told to stand back here because the sound is better. Every morning, I would go to the gym in Union Square. Union Square in San Francisco is like Fifth Avenue in New York. It's where all the big shops, all the big American stores, Nordstrom's and Macy's and Bloomingdale's and Gap and Old Navy and Levi are there, and then all the big foreign brands like Gucci and De La Valle and Prada and Burberry and Ferragamo all have big flagship stores there. People come from all over the world to shop in Union Square. And I would go there every morning before court to go to the gym. And I went back there last month, and all of those stores are closed. It's just acre after acre of plywood. And they're closed because of the chaos on the streets in San Francisco now, because there's a huge homeless population. And, people are scared to go. People are worried about their safety. There's hygiene problems. There's all kinds of, it's not a pleasant place to go anymore. To me, it was heartbreaking. San Francisco is my favorite city. It's the most beautiful city in this country. And it's had its economic heart ripped out of it. And it made me curious about homelessness, which is an issue that I really didn't know much about, other than what we all kind of know about it. So I began researching the cause of homelessness. My son Connor introduced me to this writer called Matthew Desmond, who's written the seminal work on homelessness, which is called Evicted. But he's also done a lot of studies with the University of San Francisco, and they've actually gone out and interviewed thousands of homeless and given questionnaires to thousands of homeless people in San Francisco. My assumption was that homelessness was associated with drug addiction, that it was associated with mental illness and with high levels of poverty, and also that a lot of people in San Francisco who are homeless are imports. They're people who became homeless elsewhere, like New York or Detroit, and decided to spend their last couple of bucks going to San Francisco because it has a famously welcoming social service, very generous social service system. And also the weather is better than sleeping on the grates in the snow. That was my assumption. Also, people in San Francisco told me that in cities like Dallas and Austin, the police, when they arrested a homeless person, instead of putting them in the county jail, would get them a one-way ticket on the Greyhound to San Francisco. And I don't know if it's true or not. That's what a lot of people in San Francisco told me. So when I read Desmond's book and started looking at his videos and his podcast, it opened my eyes to a couple of things. One is what he shows is that homeless is a lot of, there's a lot of drug addiction among the homeless, but it's a very, very small percentage of the cause. There's much higher drug addiction rates in Detroit and West Virginia, and yet there is not a major homelessness problem in those states. Californians say we have 525,000 homeless in this country, and half of them are in California, which only has 12% of the population. So what Desmond says is it's also, while a lot of homeless people become mentally ill, they don't start out that way. that you become mentally ill when you spend, even after 3 days on the sidewalk, your psyche begins to deteriorate, and people become mentally ill when they're homeless. And also there's levels of extreme poverty in other places like Detroit and New York, and they don't have the problem. What he shows, the one correlation, and also what he found is the people who are homeless in San Francisco, almost all of them are from San Francisco. They didn't move there. And what he says is the single biggest correlate is housing prices. San Francisco has the highest housing prices in the country. And California has the highest. Where I live in California, there's 7,000 homeless in LA, and the average price of a home is $800,000. So you need to make $250,000 to be able to live there, to be able to own a home. And what Desmond says is this epidemic of homelessness that is in California now is building like a tsunami, and it's going to sweep across this country because the price of housing is going up so dramatically in this country. And 2 years ago, the price of an average home was $215,000. Today, it's $400,000. And the interest rates have gone from 3%, now they're approaching 8%, which means you're going to pay 10% or more. And, for my kids, I have 7 kids. My oldest son is in a home, who's Amaryllis, his husband. The younger ones, who are all between 20 and 30, all have good jobs. They all went to the best schools, and none of their friends are considering buying a home because it's just out of reach for them. They're thinking of how to pay their student loans. So you have a whole generation of kids in this country for whom the American dream, for my generation, the central proposition of the fundamental proposition of the American dream was that if you worked hard, if you played by the rules, that you would be able to finance a home. You'd be able to take a summer vacation. You could raise a family. You could pay for your retirement on one job. There's nobody in that generation who believes that that promise is going to be kept to them. About a month ago, in 2013, there was a poll taken of young people under 35. Amaryllis said that, my poll numbers show me 10 points ahead in that generation, under 35. But I'm also winning under 45. I'm beating in a 3-way race against Trump and Biden, I'm winning that generation. And it's because I care about these issues. I see what's happening. I have all these kids in that age cohort. And in 2013, there was a poll taken of American kids under 35 years old. And 85% of them said they were proud of the United States of America. The same poll taken last month showed that only 18% said they were proud of our country. So somehow during the terms of the last 2 presidents of the United States, this entire generation of Americans lost faith in our country, and most of them have lost hope for their own lives. They're the first generation in history that believes that their lives are going to be worse, that they're going to be worse off than their parents. And we have betrayed this generation. Our generation has betrayed this generation. We've told them, go to college, everything's going to be okay. Now they're sitting on these piles of debt with no way to pay it. And housing is completely out of reach for them. And, we had a housing boom. And I grew up at a time that economists call the Great Prosperity. It was a 50-year period after World War II, when the American middle class became the greatest economic generator in the history of mankind. When I was 10 years old, my uncle was president. We owned in this country half the wealth on the face of the earth. We were the biggest exporter of goods in the world. Everybody wanted what we have. They wanted our blue jeans. They wanted our transistor radios, RCA Victrolas, American automobiles. Everybody, and they wanted our moral authority. They wanted our leadership. And a lot of that was kicked off because we put an entire generation in homes immediately after World War II with the GI Bill and this other legislation that got an entire generation into homes. If you own a home, you care about your community. You care about your police. You go to the PTA meetings, the schools, the transportation. You care about the appearance of your home. You care about your neighbors. But more importantly, you have an entree to the capitalist system because you can borrow money. Oh, if you have an entrepreneurial impulse, you can pursue it because you can take a second mortgage on your house and you can buy, you can invest in a restaurant or a bowling alley or a garage or a retail outlet. And that's what happened after World War II. You had a whole generation who were in houses and they made bets, and the American middle class became this extraordinary economic generator. Well, today we're going from a ownership society to a rental society. And that means that we're going from being citizens to being subjects. And why are housing prices so high? One of the reasons, of course, is inflation, which affects everything, because we spend $8 trillion on wars. We spent another about $8 trillion on COVID, so $16 trillion for which we got nothing in return. And that's being paid for by the American middle class. And that's one issue. That's affecting the price of everything because they printed the money without asking permission, without levying taxes, because they didn't have the courage to come and say, we're going to raise your taxes to pay for this and that war. And the way they pay for it is through a hidden tax, a stealth tax called inflation, which lands on the middle class, people in fixed incomes. So everything is going up, but housing is going up more than anything. And why is that? Well, one of the reasons is there are three giant corporations, BlackRock, State Street, and Vanguard. And those corporations own 89% of the S&P 500. So they own business in this country. And now they've decided that they want to own the residential housing, and particularly the single-family homes. BlackRock does not buy single-family homes, but it owns Blackstone. BlackRock and Vanguard own Blackstone. By the way, they all own each other, and Blackstone is buying the single-family home. So it's the instrument through which BlackRock is the biggest corporation on earth, has $10 trillion under management. It's 3 times the state of California, the economy. It's the 3rd largest economy in the world. And they own, as I said, the business in this country, and now they're looking to buy the land, the agricultural land, and the residential housing. And corporations already own 6% of the housing in this country, and they're on a trajectory to own between 40 and 60% within 6 years. So all of you have this experience, or know people who've had this experience. They're about to go into escrow or sign a contract on a home, and at the last minute, somebody comes in with a cash offer 20% greater than the asking price and sweeps it off the table. And you have... And you ask, who is this who just took my home? And you look into it, and it's an LLC with an ambiguous name. And then you follow the breadcrumbs, and it traces back to Blackstone, State Street, and Vanguard. So, I'm running against 2.
They're not feeling it. You guys nervous? We're a little nervous too.
Nah.
That'll be fine.
That sounded like the buzzer. All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Please go to your podiums. That was awkward enough. Let's get you.
Thank goodness. Get
Save
out of
us
here.
and them. Is there anyone on stage, and can I see hands, who is unwilling tonight to pledge your support to the eventual nominee of the Republican Party and pledge to not run an independent campaign against that person? Again, we're looking for you to raise your hand now. Raise your hand now if you won't make that pledge tonight. Mr. Trump. So, Mr. Trump, to be clear, You're standing on a Republican primary
I
debate
fully
stage,
understand.
the place where the RNC will give the nominee the nod.
I fully understand.
And that experts say an independent run would almost certainly hand the race over to Democrats and likely another Clinton. You can't say tonight that you can make that pledge.
I cannot say. I have to respect the person that if it's not me, the person that wins. If I do win and I'm leading by quite a bit, that's what I want to do. I can totally make that pledge. If I'm the nominee, I will pledge I will not run as an independent. But and I am discussing it with everybody, but I'm talking about a lot of leverage. We want to win, and we will win. But I want to win as the Republican. I want to run as the Republican nominee.
So tonight you can't say if another one of these...
This is what's wrong. I mean, This is what's wrong. He buys and sells politicians of all stripes. He's already,
Dr. Paul.
hey, look, he's already hedging his bet on the Clintons, okay? So if he doesn't run as a Republican, maybe he supports Clinton or maybe he runs as an independent.
Okay.
But I'd say that he's already hedging his bets because he's used to buying politicians.
Well, I've given him plenty of money.
Just to be clear, you can't make we're going to move on. You're not going to make the pledge tonight.
I will not make the pledge at this time.
Okay. All right.
That's what.
I'm proud of my dad, and I'm certainly proud of my brother. In Florida, they call me Jeb because I earned it.
You've called women you don't like fat pigs, dogs, slobs, and disgusting animals. Your Twitter account
Only
has
Rosie
several...
O'Donnell.
No, it wasn't. Your Twitter account...
Thank you.
For the record, it was well beyond Rosie O'Donnell.
Yes, I'm sure it was.
Your Twitter account has several disparaging comments about women's looks. You once told a contestant on Celebrity Apprentice it would be a pretty picture to see her on her knees. Does that sound to you like the temperament of a man we should elect as president? And how will you answer the charge from Hillary Clinton, who is likely to be the Democratic nominee, that you are part of the war on women?
I think the big problem this country has is being politically correct. And I don't frankly have time for total political correctness. And to be honest with you, this country doesn't have time either. This country is in big trouble. We don't win anymore. We lose to China. We lose to Mexico, both in trade and at the border. We lose to everyone. And honestly, Megyn, if you don't like it, I'm sorry. I've been very nice to you, although I could probably maybe not be based on the way you have treated me, but I wouldn't do that. But you know what? We need strength, we need energy, we need quickness, and we need brain in this country to turn it around.
Mr. Trump, it has not escaped anybody's notice that you say that the Mexican government is sending criminals, rapists, drug dealers across the border. Governor Bush has called those remarks, quote, extraordinarily ugly. I'd like you're right next to him, talk to him directly and say how you respond to that. And you have repeatedly said that you have evidence that the Mexican government is doing this, but that you have evidence you have refused or declined to share. Why not use this first Republican presidential debate to share your proof with the American people?
So, if it weren't for me, you wouldn't even be talking about illegal immigration, Chris. You wouldn't even be talking about it. This was not a subject that was on anybody's mind until I brought it up at my announcement, and I said, Mexico is sending. Except the reporters, because they're a very dishonest lot, generally speaking, in the world of politics, they didn't cover my statement the way I said it. The fact is, since then, many killings, murders, crime, drugs pouring across the border, our money going out and the drugs coming in. And I said, we need to build a wall, and it has to be built quickly. And I don't mind having a big, beautiful door in that wall so that people can come into this country legally. But we need, Jeb, to build a wall. We need to keep illegals out.
Mr. Trump, I'll give you 30 seconds. I'll give you 30 seconds to answer my question, which was, what evidence do you have, specific evidence, that the Mexican government is sending criminals across the border? 30 seconds.
Border Patrol, I was at the border last week. Border Patrol, people that I deal with, that I talk to, they say this is what's happening because our leaders are stupid, our politicians are stupid, and the Mexican government is much smarter, much sharper, much more cunning, and they send the bad ones over because they don't want to pay for them, they don't want to take care of them. Why should they when the stupid leaders of the United States will do it for them? And that's what's happening, whether you like it or not.
I want to collect more records from terrorists, but less records from innocent Americans. The Fourth Amendment was what we fought the revolution over. John Adams said it was the spark that led to our war for independence. And I'm proud of standing for the Bill of Rights, and I will continue to stand for the Bill of Rights.
And Megan, that's a completely ridiculous answer. I want to collect more records from terrorists, but less records from other people. How are you supposed to know, Megan?
Use the Fourth
What are you supposed
Amendment.
to? How are you supposed
Use
to?
the Fourth
No, I'll tell you
Amendment.
how you
Get a warrant.
Let me tell you something.
Get
you
a
go
judge to sign
when
a warrant.
Senator.
Go ahead, wait, Governor Christie, make your point.
Listen, Senator, when you're sitting in a subcommittee just blowing hot air about this, you can say things like that. When you're responsible for protecting the lives of the American people, then what you need to do is to make sure that you use the system the way it's supposed to work.
Here's the problem, Governor. You fundamentally misunderstand the Bill of Rights. Every time you did a case, you got a warrant from a judge. I'm talking about searches without warrants, indiscriminately of all Americans' records, and that's what I fought to end. I don't trust President Obama with our records. I know you gave him a big hug, and if you want to give him a big hug again, go right ahead.
Go ahead, Governor.
And Senator Paul, the hugs that I remember are the hugs that I gave to the families who lost their people on September 11th. Those are the hugs I remember.
Candidates, you may not have seen the late developing news today. Our Fox Pentagon team broke earlier this evening about a top Iranian general traveling to Moscow to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin. His name is General Qasem Soleimani. He's blamed for hundreds of U.S. troops' deaths in Iraq and Afghanistan. His trip to Russia appears to directly violate UN Security Council resolutions to confine him to Iran. So, Mr. Trump, if you were president, how would you respond to this?
I would be so different from what you have right now.
Last night, at my direction, the United States military successfully executed a flawless precision strike that killed the #1 terrorist anywhere in the world, Qasem Soleimani.
You didn't answer my question. Would you feel comfortable with Donald Trump's finger on the nuclear codes? It's an issue that one of your fellow candidates has raised.
That's not for me to answer. It is for the voters of this country to answer. And I have a lot of faith in the common sense and good judgment of the voters of the United States of America.
Mr. Trump?
Well, first of all, Rand Paul shouldn't even be on this stage. He's number 11. He's got 1% in the polls, and how he got up here, there's far too many people. Anyway, as far as temperament, and we all know that, as far as temperament, I think I have a great temperament, but we will be respected outside of this country. We are not respected now.
Senator Paul, your name has been invoked.
I kind of have to laugh when I think, sounds like a non sequitur. He was asked whether or not he would be capable and it would be in good hands to be in charge of the nuclear weapons, and all of a sudden there's a sideways attack at me. I think that really goes to the judgment. Do we want someone with that kind of character, that kind of careless language to be negotiating with Putin? Do we want someone like that to be negotiating with Iran? I think really there's a sophomoric quality that is entertaining about Mr. Trump. But I am worried. I'm very concerned about having him in charge of the nuclear weapons, because I think his response, his visceral response to attack people on their appearance, short, tall, fat, ugly, my goodness, that happened in junior high. Are we not way above that? And would we not all be worried to have someone like that in charge of the nuclear arsenal?
Mr. Trump?
I never attacked him on his look, and believe me, there's plenty of subject matter right there. That I can tell you.
That was generous and gave me money was Donald Trump. He wanted casino gambling in Florida.
I didn't want
Yes, you did.
Totally false.
You wanted it, and you didn't get
I
it
would've
because I
gotten
was
it.
opposed to casino gambling
I
before,
promise I would've
during,
gotten it.
and after. And that's not, I'm not going to be bought by
I
anybody.
promise, if I wanted it, I would have gotten it.
No way, Ben.
Believe me.
Nope.
I know my people.
Not even possible.
I know my people.
Is there anything else you want to say about this?
No, I just will tell you that, Jeb made the statement. I'm not only referring to him. A lot of money was raised by a lot of different people that are standing up here. And the donors, the special interests, the lobbyists have very strong power over these people. I'm spending all of my money. I'm not getting any. I turned down I turned down so much. I could have right now from special interests and donors, I could have double and triple what he's got. I've turned it down. I've turned down last week $5 million from somebody.
You got Hillary Clinton to go to your wedding
That's
because
true.
you gave her
That's
money.
true.
Maybe it works for Hillary Clinton. It doesn't work
Jeff,
for anybody on
Jeff,
this stage.
I was a businessman. I got along with Clinton. I got along with everybody.
Yeah.
That was my job, to get along with people.
But the
I didn't
simple
want
fact is-
Excuse me. 1 second.
No.
I
The
didn't
simple
want to.
fact is,
Jeff,
Donald,
oh,
you
good.
cannot take-
more energy tonight. I like
No.
that. Look,
I was asked the question.
I didn't want. It was my obligation as a businessman to my family, to my company, to my employees, to get along with all politicians. I got along with all of them, and I did a damn good job in doing it. Go ahead.
So, he supports Pelosi. He supports Schumer. He supports Clinton.
Got along with everybody.
And when he asked Florida to have casino gambling, we said no.
Wrong.
We said no, and that's the simple fact. The simple
don't
fact
make things
is,
up, Jeb. Don't
cut me off.
Come
sir.
on, don't make things. What I said to you,
May I
what I
make a
said
response
was
to that?
you're going to
He's
destabilize
referred
the Middle
to
East,
me-
and that's what happened.
So
He's
you-
referred to me
No,
in
the
his
first
remarks.
chance.
May I make a response?
Right after me,
Go
and
ahead,
I'll yield the floor. What do you guys say in the Senate when you're talking and debating?
Absolutely. Go
Whatever.
ahead.
Here's the facts. As it relates to my brother, there's one thing I know for sure. He kept us safe. I don't know if you remember, Donald. You remember the rubble? You remember the firefighter with his arms around it? He sent a clear signal that the United States would be strong and fight Islamic terrorism, and he did keep us safe.
I don't know. You feel safe right now? I don't feel so safe.
40 years ago, I smoked marijuana, and I admit it.
Autism has become an epidemic. And just thirdly, he was so nice. He was such a nice guy. And he said, oh, I'm never going to attack. But then his poll numbers tanked. That's why he's on the end. And he got nasty. So you know what? You can have him.
Where did I read this and come up with this that you were...
Probably, I don't know. You people write this stuff. I don't know where you...
Let's just be clear. Let's talk again about
And if I could say just one thing.
Yeah.
I am the only person in either campaign that's self-funding. I'm putting up 100% of my own money. And right now, I will be putting up a tremendous... So far, I put up less than anybody, and I have the best results. Wouldn't that be nice if the country could do that? But I will be putting up, tremendous amounts of money. Super PACs are a disaster. They're a scam. They cause dishonesty. And you better get rid of them, because they are causing a lot of bad decisions to be made by some very good people. And I'm not blaming these folks, but I guess I could.
Governor Bush.
Yeah.
I would like to make a comment.
You've already made 2 comments, John. It's my turn.
We have more questions for you, Governor Kasich, coming up. We have more questions for you, Governor Kasich.
I got about 4 minutes last debate. I'm going to get my question right now.
I appreciate it, Jeb. I'm all for you. But I want at some point talk about a value-added tax and $11-12 trillion tax cuts that will put our kids way deeper in the hole than they have been at this point. So I'd like to talk about it at some point, because that's what leadership is.
We will certainly get to that. Governor Bush.
Yeah.
We can't ship 11 million people out of this country. Children would be terrified, and it will not work.
Thank you.
Mr.
Trump, you've had a good... Built an unbelievable company worth billions and billions of dollars. I don't have to hear from this man. Believe me. I don't have to hear from him.
Mr. Trump, you yourself said let Governor Bush speak. Governor Bush.
Thank you, Donald, for allowing me to speak at the debate. That's really nice of you. Really appreciate that. What a generous man you are.
Ronald Reagan didn't
And Ronald
send troops
Reagan
into
walked
the Middle
away at
East.
Reykjavik. He walked away. He quit talking
finish with
when it
my
was
time?
time to quit
Can I finish
talking.
with my
Why
time?
does she keep interrupting everybody?
Yeah.
Why?
Terrible. Yeah, I'd like to finish my response, basically.
If I may respond.
This is an important question. This is an incredibly important question.
Why would you then bail out rich Wall Street banks, but not Main Street, not mom and pop, not Sabina Loving? Well, you just said an executive knows to step in and bail out a bank.
They were talking about what you would do with depositors. Would you let these banks shut down? My argument is going forward, the banks have to reserve the capital so that the people who own the capital start pressuring the banks to not take these risky approaches, Ted. But at the end of the day,
so you said you'd abandon philosophy and abandon principle, but what would you do if the bank was failing?
Because if during,
what would you do if the bank was failing?
I would not let the people who put their money in there all go down.
So you would bail them out?
No, as an executive, I would figure out how to separate those people who could afford it versus those people or the hardworking folks who put their money in those institutions. Let me say another thing. Here's what I mean by that.
You flew in with your 767, didn't you? Right there, right next to the plant?
No, the new planes. I'm not talking about now. I'm talking about in the future. They're building massive plants in China because China does not want Boeing building their planes here. They want it built in China because China happens to be smart the way they do it, not the way we do it.
When you head back to the airport tonight, go check and see.
Oh, yeah, I'll check for you.
Check it out.
Now you got Europe. We're not doing that.
Why should individuals
Maria,
I'd like to
interrupt instead of 10%.
Maria, I'd like to interrupt the floor of the Senate to actually answer the question you asked, which was on entitlements. Do you remember that, everybody? This was a question on entitlements.
I'll answer
the reason. Now you already had your chance, Mark. You blew it. Here's the thing.
Jeb doesn't really believe I'm unhinged. He said that very simply because he has failed in this campaign. It's been a total disaster. Nobody cares. And frankly, I'm the most solid person up here. I built a tremendous company, and all I want to do is make America great again. I don't want our country to be taken away from us, and that's what's happening. The policies that we've suffered under other presidents have been a disaster for our country. We want to make America great again. And Jeb, in all fairness, he doesn't believe that.
Look, he mentioned me. I can talk. This is the problem. 2 months ago, Donald Trump said that ISIS was not our fight. Just 2 months ago, he said that Hillary Clinton would be a great negotiator with Iran, and he gets his foreign policy experience from the shows.
Come on,
that is not a serious kind of candidate. We need someone.
We need toughness. Honestly, I think Jeb is a very nice person. He's a very nice person, but we need tough people. We need toughness. We need intelligence, and we need tough. Jeb said when they come across the southern border, they come as an act of love.
You said in September 30th that ISIS was not a
am I
not
talking or are you talking, Jeb?
I'm talking right now. I'm talking.
You can go back. You're not talking. You interrupted me,
September 30th,
Are you going to apologize, Jeb? No. Am I allowed to finish?
Yes, one at a time.
Excuse me. Am I allowed to finish?
Go ahead, Mr. Trump.
So,
little of your
again,
own medicine there.
I know you're trying to build
Bush,
up your energy,
please.
Jeb, but it's not working
One at a
very
time.
well.
Yeah.
Look. We need a toughness. We need strength.
Governor Bush.
Donald, you're not going to be able to insult your way to the presidency. That's not going to happen. And I do have the strength. Leadership is not about a military that is second to none so that we can destroy Islamic terrorism.
With Jeb's attitude, we will never be great again. That I can tell you. We will never be great again.
All right, Hugh, go ahead with the next question.
I'd like to also go back to, though, another question, which is Donald Trump a serious candidate? The reason I ask this is...
Mentioned, so I can bring up something, I think, right? Look, the simple fact is, if you think this is tough and you're not being treated fairly,
isn't tough and easy.
Imagine what it's going to be like dealing with Putin, or dealing with
easy
President Xi, or dealing with the Islamic terrorism that exists. This is a tough business to run for president.
I know. You're a tough guy, Jeb.
And we need to have a leader that is principled. You're never going to be president of the United States by insulting your way to the presidency.
Let's see. I'm at 42 and you're at 3, so far I'm doing better.
Doesn't matter.
So far I'm doing better. You know, you started off over here, Jeb. You're moving over further and further. Pretty soon you're going to be off the end.
This doesn't do a thing to solve the problem.
One at a time.
Doesn't do a thing to solve the
Hugh, go ahead.
Why would you be willing to put somebody who's a maniac one heartbeat away from the presidency?
But I've gotten to know him over the last 3 or 4 days. He has a wonderful temperament. He's just fine. Don't worry about it.
Okay. Senator Cruz.
Kathy Kasich.
Ladies and gentlemen, the Republican candidates.
And Dr. Ben Carson, please come out on the stage. He's standing there as well. Dr. Carson.
And Donald Trump.
And lastly, we welcome...
The RNC told us we have all donors in the audience, and the reason they're not loving me, the reason they're not loving me is I don't want their money. I'm going to do the right thing for the American public. I don't want their money. I don't need their money. And I'm the only one up here that can say that. Eminent domain, the Keystone Pipeline, do you consider that a private job?
I consider it a public use.
No, let me ask you, Jeb. Do you consider the Keystone Pipeline private? Is it public or private?
It's a public use.
Oh, really? A public use? No, it's a private job.
It's a public use.
It's a private job.
Established by the courts, federal, state
You
courts.
wouldn't have the Keystone Pipeline that you want so badly without eminent domain.
All right, exactly.
You wouldn't have massive, excuse me, Josh, you wouldn't have massive factories without eminent domain. No, I'm the only one on the stage that's hired people. You haven't hired anybody.
Well, in fact, some of the people
And
he
by the way,
hired, well, but hold on.
I've hired,
And no,
and by
in
the way,
fact-
I've hired tens of thousands of people over my job. You've
Yeah,
hired
you've hired
nobody.
1,000 people
You've
from
had
another
nothing
company,
but problems
from another
with your
country.
credit cards, etc.
Let me
So
say,
don't
let
tell
me just
me
say,
about
well,
that.
let me finish this
Senator,
statement.
hold
This is
on.
important.
You haven't hired one
He
person
hired
in your life.
workers from Poland, and he had to pay $1 million or so in a judgment.
wrong.
For hiring.
That's
It is,
wrong.
That's a fact.
Totally wrong.
Well, people can look it up. I'm sure people are Googling it right
I've
now. Look it
hired
up.
Senator Cruz.
Trump
Excuse
Polish
me.
workers. You'll see $1 million for hiring
Excuse me.
illegal workers on one of his
Excuse me,
projects.
yeah.
Yeah, he did.
Well, you know, it's interesting.
That happened.
I've hired tens of thousands of people over my lifetime. Tens of
Many
thousands.
from other
Be-
countries
be
instead of
quiet,
hiring
just
Americans.
Be quiet. Let me talk. I've hired tens of thousands of people. He brings up something from 30 years ago. It worked out very well. Everybody was
Yeah, you paid
happy.
$1 million.
And by the way, the laws were totally different.
right.
That was a whole different
Well,
world.
Thank you.
right.
But I've hired people. Nobody up here has hired
Senator
anybody.
Cruz, you say you want to deport the election.
As one magazine said, he's a world-class businessman. He was friendly with everybody. I got along with everybody. You get along with nobody. You don't have one Republican. You don't have one Republican senator, and you work with them every day of your life, although you skipped a lot of time. These are minor details. But you don't have one Republican senator backing you, not one. You don't have the endorsement of one Republican senator, and you work with these people.
Senator Cruz.
You should be ashamed of yourself.
You know, I actually think Donald is right. He is promising if he's elected, he will go and cut deals in Washington. And he's right. He has supported, he has given hundreds of thousands of dollars to Democrats. Anyone who really cared about illegal immigration wouldn't be hiring illegal immigrants. Anyone who really cared about illegal immigration wouldn't be funding Harry Reid and Nancy Pelosi, wouldn't be funding the Gang of Eight. And, you know, he is right. When you stand up to Washington, when you honor the promise you made to the men and women who elected you and say enough with the corruption, enough with the cronyism, let's actually stand for the working men and women of this country, Washington doesn't like it. And, Donald, if you want to be liked in Washington, that's not a good attribute for a president.
Hey, here's a man, Robin Hood. This is Robin Hood over here. He talks about corruption on his financial disclosure form. He didn't even put that he's borrowed money from Citibank and from Goldman Sachs, which is a total violation. He didn't talk about the fact that he pays almost no interest. He just left it off, and now he's going to protect the people from the big bad banks.
We're going to move on to Governor Kasich. Governor Kasich,
Can I respond to that, Tack?
you can respond, but let me get Governor Kasich in. He's been waiting patiently.
Well,
Governor Kasich.
If he builds the wall the way he built Trump Towers, he'll be using illegal immigrant labor to do it. The second...
So cute. Such a cute soundbite.
But no, it's not a soundbite. It's a fact.
Yeah,
Again, go online and Google it. Donald Trump, Polish workers. You'll see it. The second thing about the trade war, I don't understand, because your ties and the clothes you make is made in Mexico and in China. So you're going to be starting a trade war against your own ties and your own suits. That's right. All right.
You know why? Because
Why don't you
they
make them in
devalue
America?
their currencies.
No.
They devalue their currencies.
Well, then make them in
that
America.
Makes it well, you don't know anything about business. You lose
Well,
on
make them
everything
in
you do.
America.
Let me just tell you, they devalue their currencies. China, Mexico, everybody, Japan, with the cars. They devalue their currencies to such an extent that our businesses cannot compete with them. Our workers lose their
And
jobs.
so you make them
but
in China
you wouldn't
and
know
in
anything
Russia.
about it because you're a lousy
Well, I don't know
businessman.
anything about bankrupting four
All right.
companies.
No,
You
I
bankrupted
know.
four
You know what?
companies.
You know what?
I don't know anything about
You know what?
starting a
That's
university.
called-
That was a fake university.
First of all,
a fake university.
That's called.
There are people that borrow $36,000 to go to
Mr.
Trump University, and they're suing him now. $36,000 to go to a university.
And by the way,
that's a fake school.
And by the way,
and you know what they got? They got to take a picture with a cardboard cutout of Donald Trump.
And by the way,
that's what they
I've
got
won
for the
most of the
$36,000.
I want to move
and
on.
they actually did a very good job. But
Mr.
I've
Trump.
won most of the lawsuit.
Senator, I
For
want to bring
most of the lawsuit.
I want to bring in my colleague Maria Celeste.
Excuse me, hey, Wolf, let me ask you, am I allowed to respond to this
You're
guy?
allowed. You've been responding.
Okay, well, no, I haven't. I really haven't.
He's
Go
talked
ahead.
through the whole
I
thing.
haven't. Here's the guy that buys a house for $179,000. He sells it to a lobbyist who's probably here for $380,000, and then legislation is passed. You tell me about this guy. This is what we're going to have.
Here's the guy that
president?
inherited $200 million. If he hadn't inherited $200 million, you know where Donald Trump would be right now? Selling watches in Manhattan.
Wrong.
That's where
That
he would
is
be.
so wrong. We'll work on that. I took $1 million and I turned it into $10
$1 million.
billion. I borrowed $1
Then
million.
release the tax return so he can see how
I
much money he
borrowed
makes.
$1 million. I
he
turned it
doesn't make
into
that much
$10
money.
billion, more than $10 billion.
Thank you. I want to bring in Maria Celeste of Telemundo.
I have to say,
Senator
he lied
Cruz.
this time. He lied. 100%. 100%.
Senator
You lied about the Polish workers.
Yeah.
You lied to the
30
students of
38
Trump
years ago.
University.
38
Let Senator
years
Cruz
ago.
Oh, he
jump in,
lied
please.
38 years ago. All right, I guess there's a statute of limitation on lies.
You'll have many different plans. You'll have competition. You'll have so many different plans.
But now he's repeating himself.
No, I'm not repeating. No. I don't repeat myself.
You don't repeat yourself.
Here's the guy who repeats himself.
You repeat yourself every day.
I watched him, talking about repeating, I watched him repeat himself 5 times 4 weeks ago. And
I saw
want to
you
tell
repeat yourself 5
it
times
was a
5
meltdown.
seconds ago.
I watched him melt down on the stage like I've never seen anybody. I
let's stay
thought he
focused
came out
on
of
the
the swimming
substance.
pool.
I said, well,
Let's talk
I see him
about
repeat
your
himself
plan.
every night. It says 5 things. Everyone's dumb.
Senator
He's going to
Rubio.
make America great
Senator
again. We're going to
Rubio.
win.
Senator
He's
Rubio,
winning in the
please.
polls.
It's all true.
And the
Please stop.
lines around the state. Every night. Same thing.
Senator Rubio.
I tell the truth. I tell
Senator
the truth.
Rubio, you will have time to respond if you
All
would
right.
just let Mr. Trump respond to what
Yeah,
you
he's
just
gonna give us
posed
his
to
plan
him.
now, right?
If
Okay.
you could talk a little bit more about your plan. I know you talked about
No,
the
we're going to
interstate.
have many different plans
Can you
because there's
give us
going to be
specific?
competition.
Said it again.
There's going to be competition. There is going to be competition among all of the states and the insurance companies. They're going to have many, many different plans.
Is there anything else you would like to add to that? as part of
No,
your
there's
plan?
nothing to add. What's to add? What is to add?
Thank you both.
All right.
Governor Kasich, you've said
Roughly 65% of Republicans think Donald is not the right candidate to go against Hillary Clinton. Now, part of the reason is in the
85%
last
say you.
10
Big
polls
difference.
on Real Clear Politics, he's lost to Hillary on 8 of them. In the last 10 polls on Real Clear Politics, I either tie or beat Hillary. And this is an example. You know, the mainstream media is laying off Donald now. They're going to pick apart his taxes. They're going to pick apart his business deals. And let's take, for example, one of Hillary's great vulnerabilities, the corruption at the Clinton Foundation. The fact that she had CEOs and foreign companies giving her money while she was Secretary of State. The next Republican...
Beating him awfully badly in the polls.
But
every
you're not
single
beating
one of them.
Hillary.
So
But
I don't
you're not
know.
beating
I don't-
Hillary.
Well, then if I can't beat her, you're really going to get killed, aren't you? So let me ask you this, because you're really getting beaten badly. I know you're embarrassed. I know you're embarrassed, but keep fighting, keep swinging, man. Swing for the fences. Let me just tell you. The Trump University case, watched him melt down, and I'll tell you, it was one of the saddest things I've ever seen. He's not going down.
He thinks the
Excuse me, wait
Palestinian is a
minute, wait
real
minute.
estate deal.
And these people may even be tougher than Chris Christie, okay?
The Palestinians
They may
are not
even
a
be
real
tougher.
estate deal, Donald.
Okay, no. A deal,
They're not a real estate
deal
deal.
is a deal. Let me tell you,
A
I've
deal
learned
is
a
not
long
a deal
time
when you're
ago.
dealing with terrorists. Have you
You
ever
are not a
negotiated with terrorists?
negotiator. You are not a negotiator. And with your thinking, you will never bring peace. You will never bring peace.
Donald might be able to build
I wanna be
condos in the
able-
Palestinian
Excuse
areas,
me.
but he's not going to. This is
Excuse
not a
me,
real
I
estate
wanna
deal.
be able to bring
Senator.
peace. He will never be able to do it. I think I may be able to do it, although I will say this, probably the toughest deal of any kind is that particular deal.
Let's move on and talk about North Korea.
You are all talk and no
Name one
action. What I've
specific thing you've
seen
done.
up here, I mean, first of all, this guy's a choke artist and this guy's a liar. You have a combination.
guy always goes.
You have a combination of factors. He
This is
can't
so
do it for the
typical.
obvious reason, and he
But
can't do
here's
it
the
because
typical
he
thing he
doesn't know
does.
how to tell the truth. Other than that, I rest my case.
This is the typical thing he does on any debate about policy.
One at a
He
time,
goes right for the
Governor
outrageous statement.
Kasich, you have the floor. Governor,
Hugh, I get a response to that.
You will have a response, but I promised Governor Kasich he could respond.
I know politicians, believe it or not, better than you do, and it's not good.
Oh, I believe it. No, I believe you know politicians much better than I do because for 40 years you've been funding liberal Democratic politicians. And by the way,
I funded
the,
you.
The
I
reason
funded him.
You're welcome
You
to
believe
have
it?
the check
I
back.
funded this guy.
Because let's
I
be
gave him a
clear.
check.
Yeah,
I
you
gave
gave me
him a check.
$5,000.
He never funded me.
And by the way, let's be clear. Donald claims to care
You know why? I didn't
about
want to, but he sent me his book with his autograph.
Donald, I understand rules
Mr.
are very
Trump,
hard
you're
for you.
doing
They're
a great
very
job.
confusing.
I have his book.
Okay,
Yeah, on your reality
Trump,
TV
you're doing a
show,
great
not
job.
in
Thank you,
Donald.
thank you for the book.
Donald.
Thank you for the book. Go ahead.
Donald, you can get back on
There's
your
a
meds
lot of
now.
fun up here tonight, I have to tell you. Thank you for the book. I really appreciate it.
Donald, relax.
Go ahead. I'm relaxed. You're the
sent him a
basket
book.
case. Go ahead. Go
Donald.
ahead. Don't get nervous. Go ahead.
My
I promise you, Donald,
is
there's nothing about
I've
you
seen
that,
you.
that makes
I've
anyone
seen you.
nervous.
You're losing
people
so
are actually
badly.
watching this
You
event.
don't know what's happening.
Gentlemen.
Wolf, I'm going to ask that my
We gotta
time not
stop
be
this.
deducted
That
when
time
he's
is up,
yelling
Wolf.
you.
Gentlemen.
Take control. Okay, now.
The latest debate,
Well, hold on,
gentlemen,
I'm
please.
going to get my answer. He doesn't get to
I
yell in
want
the
to
whole
move.
time.
I want to move on. These are the rules.
He, excuse me, he
We're
called
moving
me
on.
a liar and then interrupted the whole time.
You've
Am I
had a
allowed to-
chance.
Wolf, do I not get a response?
You have-
Do I not get a response
You'll
without
get, you'll
being
get
interrupted?
plenty of response, so stand by.
My name was
I want to
mentioned.
talk. I want to talk about ISIS right now, and the federal government.
Marco went on Univision in Spanish and said he would not rescind President Obama's illegal executive amnesty on his first day in office. I have promised to rescind every single illegal executive action, including that one. And on the question,
Well, first of all, I don't know how he knows what I said on Univision because he doesn't speak Spanish. And second of all, the other point that I would make.
Marco, si quieres, díselo ahora mismo, díselo ahora. En español, si quieres.
Senator Cruz.
What an incredible nation we have, that the son of a bartender and the son of a mailman and the son of a dishwasher and a successful businessman can all stand on this stage competing and asking for your support.
Well, they were coming.
Call up Carrier, the president, because I have to do it myself. I know it's not. Oh, no, it's only the same people coming down the stairs. No, there's a remnant. Yeah, he's right there. Okay. Yeah, throw him out. Throw him out into the cold. You know, don't give them their coat. No coats. No coats. Confiscate their coat. You know, you can't win. By the way, just to finish, I had one word left. So that we put them in our jails. Because to put them in our jails, they didn't pay the electric bill. To put them, oh, I like that much better. Oh. Oh, that's so much better. Those lights were brutal. They come from the dishonest press? Where? Oh, don't turn them off. Forget it. Better, right? Don't turn them on. Don't turn the lights on, plus we save on electricity, right? And because the lights didn't work, I won't pay the rent, so we get better lighting and we don't pay the rent, right? Right? No, get those lights off. Off! Turn them off, they're too bright, turn them off. Turn them off, let's go, ready? Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. Turn off the lights. Turn them off. So much nicer. No, that's the way we have to negotiate for our country. The biggest in the world, the Chinese bank. Don't worry about that baby. I love babies. So I love babies. I hear that baby crying. I like it. What a baby.
What a beautiful baby. Don't worry, don't worry. The mom's running around like, don't worry about it, you know. It's young and beautiful and healthy, and that's what we want. Okay, but look. We have the piggy bank. They have ripped us to shreds. Ripped us absolutely to shreds. Actually, I was only kidding. You can get the baby out of here. That's all right. Don't worry. I think she really believed me that I love having a baby crying while I'm speaking. That's okay. People don't understand. That's okay. You know, you have one guy over there shouting. We have thousands of people, and you'll read about him tomorrow. They'll say, oh, the room had a picket. All right, yeah, get him the hell out of here, will you, please? Get him out of here. Throw him out. No, we had it the other day. I got criticized. We had it the other night. I had a lot of people, and one guy who was seriously obese. He complained when I mentioned that food stamps, we have a lot of people on food stamps. And the guy went crazy. And they said that wasn't politically correct. Who cares? We all have a weight problem. Yeah, you can get him out. Yeah, get him out. Get him the hell out of here. Get him out of here. Get out. Get him out of here. Friends, delegates, and fellow Americans, I humbly and gratefully accept your nomination for the presidency of the United States.
Campaign says she felt overheated and she went to her daughter's apartment to get her bearings. Let's watch this video for a second. There you see her apparently almost falling.
You can make a difference. Too much to say.
Wow. Hillary's coughing fit lasted a full 2 minutes. Even when it finally subsided, her voice still sounded strained.
You're a great amen chorus. Thank you. And I want to thank Congresswoman Marcia Fudge for hosting us. I've been talking so. Every time I think about Trump, I get allergic. Boy, we have 63 days to go.
At community colleges, at apprenticeships run by labor unions and businesses. Because we're going to have a lot of jobs from building infrastructure to coding, creating new apps. I don't know who created Pokemon Go, but I'm trying to figure out how we get them to have Pokemon go to the polls.
Just for the record, are you a progressive or are you a moderate?
I'm a progressive, but I'm a progressive who likes to get things done. And I know how to find common ground, and I know how to stand my ground.
Clinton, is Bernie Sanders tough enough on guns?
No. Not at all. This has gone on too long, and it's time the entire country stood up against the NRA.
We can raise our voices, but I come from a rural state, and the views on gun control in rural states are different than in urban states, whether we like it or not. Congress does not regulate Wall Street. Wall Street regulates Congress, and we have got to break off these banks.
Voted to save the auto industry. He voted against the money that ended up saving the auto industry. I think that is a pretty big difference.
Well, if you are talking about the Wall Street bailout, where some of your friends destroyed this economy,
you know.
Excuse me, I'm talking.
Let him respond.
If you're going to talk, tell the whole story, Senator
Let
Sanders.
me tell my story, you tell yours.
I will.
Your story is for voting for every disastrous trade agreement and voting for corporate America. Did I vote against the Wall Street bailout when billionaires on Wall Street destroyed this economy?
Doing it, and now you're just starting to think of solutions.
Well, actually,
I will bring back jobs. You can't bring back jobs.
Well, actually, I have thought about this quite a bit.
Yeah, for 30
and
years.
I have, well, not quite that long. I think my husband did a pretty good job in the 1990s. I think a lot about what worked and how we can make it work again.
Well, he approved
3 million
NAFTA.
new jobs,
He approved
a balanced
NAFTA,
budget,
which is the single
and
worst trade deal ever approved in this country.
Incomes went up for everybody. Manufacturing jobs went up also in the 1990s, if we're actually going to look at the facts. When I was in the Senate, I had a number of trade deals.
You can't win that debate, but you know that if you did win, you would approve that, and that will be almost as bad as NAFTA. Nothing will ever top NAFTA.
That is just not accurate. I was against it once it was finally negotiated and the terms were laid out. I wrote about that in...
You called it the gold standard. You called it the gold standard of trade deals. You said it's the finest deal you've ever seen.
No.
And then you heard what I said about it, and all of a sudden you were against it.
Well, Donald, I know you live in your own reality, but that is not the facts. The facts are, I did say I hoped it would be a good deal, but when it was negotiated, which I was not responsible for, I concluded it wasn't. I wrote about that.
So is it President Obama's fault? Is it President Obama's fault?
Even announced. Look, there are
Secretary, is it President Obama's fault?
There are
because he's pushing it.
There are different views about what's good for our country, our economy, and our leadership in the world. And I think it's important to $1 trillion to the debt.
But you have no plan.
Oh, I do.
Secretary,
in fact,
you
I
have no plan.
A book about it. It's called Stronger Together. You can pick it up tomorrow.
That's about all you.
At the bookstore or at an airport near you.
We're going to move to.
But it's because I see this.
Anyway,
Well, at least I have a plan to fight ISIS.
No, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do.
No, we're not.
See, you're telling the enemy everything you want to do. No wonder you've been fighting. No wonder you've been fighting ISIS your entire adult life.
Folks,
go to the fact checkers. Get to work.
You are unpacking a lot here, and we're still in the issue of
lots of other things, and it would be beautiful. But we have no leadership, and honestly, that starts with Secretary Clinton.
All right, you have 2 minutes on the same question to defend tax increases on the wealthiest Americans, Secretary Clinton.
I have a feeling that by the end of this evening, I'm going to be blamed for everything that's ever happened.
Why not?
Why not? Yeah, why not? Just join the debate by saying more crazy things. Now, let me say,
hey, there's nothing crazy about not letting our companies bring their money back into their country.
This is Secretary Clinton's 2 minutes, please.
Yeah, well, let's start the clock again, Lester. We've looked at as a man of great dignity, and I could tell how much it bothered him and annoyed him that this was being touted and used against him. But I like to remember what Michelle Obama said in her amazing speech at our Democratic National Convention. When they go low, we go high. And Barack Obama went high, despite Donald Trump's best efforts to bring him down.
Mr. Trump, you can respond, then we're going to move on
I
to the
would
next
love to
segment.
respond. First of all, I got to watch, in preparing for this, some of your debates against Barack Obama. You treated him with terrible disrespect. And I watched the way you talk now about how lovely everything is and how wonderful you are. It doesn't work that way. You were after him. You were trying to. You even sent out, or your campaign sent out, pictures of him in a certain garb. Very famous pictures. I don't think you can deny that. But just last week, your campaign manager said it was true. So when you tried...
Well, I hope the fact checkers are turning up the volume and really working hard. Donald supported the invasion of Iraq.
Wrong.
That is absolutely proved over and over again.
Wrong.
He actually advocated for the actions we took in Libya.
I have much better judgment than she does. There's no question about that. I also have a much better temperament than she has. You know, I have a much better. She spent, let me tell you, she spent hundreds of millions of dollars on an advertising. You know, they get Madison Avenue into a room, they put names. Oh, temperament, let's go after. I think my strongest asset, maybe by far, is my temperament. I have a winning temperament. I know how to win. She does not have how to win. Wait, the AFL-CIO the other day, behind the blue screen, I don't know who you were talking to, Secretary Clinton, but you were totally out of control. I said, there's a person with a temperament that's got a problem.
Secretary Clinton.
Woo, okay. Let's talk about two important issues that were briefly mentioned by Donald. First, NATO.
And I moved on her very heavily. In fact, I took her out furniture shopping. She wanted to get some furniture. I said, I'll show you where they have some nice furniture. I took her out furniture. I moved on her like a bitch, but I couldn't get there. And she was married. And all of a sudden, I see her. She's now got the big phony tits and everything. She's totally changed her look. I better use some Tic Tacs just in case I start kissing her. You know, I'm automatically attracted to beautiful. I just start kissing them. It's like a magnet. You just kiss. I don't even wait. And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab them by the pussy. I can do anything. Bill Clinton, far worse. Minor words, and his was action. His was what he's done to women. There's never been anybody in the history of politics in this nation that's been so abusive to women. So you can say any way you want to say it, but Bill Clinton was abusive to women. Hillary Clinton attacked those same women and attacked them viciously. 4 of them are here tonight. One of the women, who is a wonderful woman, at 12 years old, was raped at 12. Her client, she represented, got him off, and she's seen laughing on 2 separate occasions, laughing at the girl who was raped. Kathy Shelton, that young woman, is here with us tonight. So don't tell me about words. I apologize for those words. But it is things that people say. But what President Clinton did, he was impeached. He lost his license to practice law. He had to pay an $850,000 fine to one of the women, Paula Jones, who's also here tonight. And I will tell you that when Hillary brings up a point like that, and she talks about words that I said 11 years ago, I think it's disgraceful, and I think she should be ashamed of herself, if you want to know the truth.
When I hear something like that, I am reminded of what my friend Michelle Obama advised us all. When they go low, you go high. And we have literally Trump. You can fact check him in real time. Last time at the first debate, we had millions of people fact checking, so I expect we'll have millions more. It's just awfully good that someone with the temperament of Donald Trump is not in charge of the law in our country.
Because you'd be in jail.
Secretary Clinton.
We want to remind the audience to please not talk out loud. Please do not applaud. You're just wasting time.
And Secretary Clinton, I do want to follow up.
From the United States
Secretary
Congress.
Clinton, you can respond. Then we have to move on to an audience question.
Look, it's just not true. And so please
you didn't delete them?
Allow her to respond, please.
Personal emails, not official.
33,000?
Well, we turned over 35,000. So it was.
What about the other 15,000?
Please allow her to respond. She didn't talk while you talked.
Yes, that's true. I didn't. I didn't in the first debate, and I'm going to try not to in this debate because I'd like to get to the questions that the people have brought here tonight to talk to us about.
And get off this question.
Okay, Donald, I know you're into big diversion tonight, anything to avoid talking about your campaign and the way it's exploding and the way Republicans are leaving you. But let's at least focus on some of the issues that people care about tonight.
From Ken Karpowitz, he has a question about health care. Ken?
I'd like to know, Anderson, why aren't you bringing up the emails? I'd like to know. Why aren't you
We brought up the emails.
No, it hasn't. It hasn't. And it hasn't been finished at all.
Ken Karpowitz has a question.
It's nice to 1-on-3.
Thank you. Affordable care.
That first one goes to Secretary Clinton because you started out the last one to the audience.
If he wants to start, he can start. No, go ahead, Donald.
No, I'm a gentleman, Hillary. Go ahead.
Secretary Clinton?
Well, I think Donald was about to say he's going to solve it by repealing it.
Wants to allow.
And why did it morph into that? No, did you? No, answer the question.
Why don't you
still
interrupt
believe?
her? You interrupt me all the time. Why don't you interrupt her?
Would you please explain whether or not the Muslim ban still stands?
It's called.
They want to create a war between us. And the final thing I would say, this is the 10th or 12th time that he's denied being for the war in Iraq. We have it on tape. The entire press corps has looked at it. It's been debunked, but it never stops him from saying whatever he wants to say.
Has not been debunked.
So please
has not been debunked. And
go to HillaryClinton.com and you can see it.
I was against the war in Iraq. Has not been debunked. And you voted for it, and you shouldn't have. Well, I just want
There's been lots of fact-checking on that. I'd like to move on to an online question.
She just went about 25 seconds over her time. Could I just respond to this, please?
Very quickly, please.
Secretary Clinton, does Mr. Trump have the discipline to be a good leader?
No.
I'm shocked to hear that.
Well, it's not only my opinion, it's the opinion of
what steps will your energy policy take to meet our energy needs, while at the same time remaining environmentally friendly and minimizing job loss for fossil power plant workers?
Would either of you name one positive thing that you respect in one another?
Mr. Trump, would you like to go first?
Well, I certainly will, because I think that's a very fair and important question. Look, I respect his children. His children are incredibly able and devoted, and I think that says a lot about Donald. I don't agree with nearly anything else he says or does, but I do respect that, and I think that is something that, as a mother and a grandmother, is very important to me.
Well, I consider her statement about my children to be a very nice compliment. I don't know if it was meant to be a compliment, but it is a great. I'm very proud of my children, and they've done a wonderful job, and they've been wonderful, wonderful kids. So I consider that a compliment. I will say this about Hillary. She doesn't quit. She doesn't give up. I respect that. I tell it like it is. She's a fighter. I disagree with much of what she's fighting for. I do disagree with her judgment in many cases. But she does fight hard, and she doesn't quit, and she doesn't give up, and I consider that to be a very good trait.
Thanks to both of you.
Donald Trump is now down 9 points in our latest CBS News poll. No presidential candidate has made up a deficit that large this close to the election.
Going to secure the border, and once the border is secured, at a later date, we'll make a determination as to the rest. But we have some bad hombres here, and we're going to get them out. Borders. But what she doesn't say is that President Obama has deported millions and millions of people just the way
Secretary
it is.
Clinton, I want to...
We will not have open borders.
Well,
that is a rank mischaracterization.
Secretary Clinton.
We will have secure borders, but we will also have reform. And this used to be a bipartisan issue. Ronald Reagan was the last president to sign immigration reform, and George W. Bush supported it as well.
Secretary Clinton, I want to clear up your position on this issue, because
that was a great pivot off the fact that she wants open borders. Okay, how did we get onto Putin?
Hold on. Wait, hold on, folks, because this is going to end up getting out of control. Let's try to keep it quiet, so for the candidates and for the American people.
So just to finish on the borders,
yes,
she wants open borders. People are going to pour into our country. People are going to come in from Syria. She wants 550% more people than Barack Obama, and he has thousands and thousands of people. They have no idea where they come from. And you see, we are going to stop radical Islamic terrorism in this country. She won't even mention the words, and neither will President Obama. So I just want to tell you, she wants open borders. Now we can talk about Putin. I don't know Putin. He said nice things about me. If we got along well, that would be good. If Russia and the United States got along well and went after ISIS, that would be good. He has no respect for her. He has no respect for our president. And I'll tell you what, we're in very serious trouble, because we have a country with tremendous numbers of nuclear warheads. 1,800, from everything I see, has no respect for this person.
Well, that's because he'd rather have a puppet as president of the United States.
No puppet.
And it's pretty clear.
You're the puppet.
It's pretty clear you won't admit
that
the Russians have engaged in cyber attacks against the United States of America, that you encouraged espionage against our people, that you are willing to spout the Putin line, sign up for his wish list, break up NATO, do whatever he wants to do, and that you continue to get help from him because he has a very clear favorite in this race. So I think that this is such an unprecedented situation. We've never had a foreign government trying. I find that deeply disturbing, and I think it's time.
She has no idea whether it's Russia, China, or anybody else.
I am not quoting myself.
No idea.
I am quoting
Hillary, you
17.
have no idea.
17 intelligence. Do you doubt 17
our
military
has
and
no
civilian agencies? Well,
yeah,
he'd rather believe Vladimir Putin than the military and civilian intelligence professionals who are sworn to protect us. I find that just absolutely.
She doesn't like Putin because Putin has outsmarted her at every step of the way. Excuse me. Putin has outsmarted her in Syria. He's outsmarted her every step of the way.
I do get to ask some questions.
Yes,
and I would like to ask you this direct question. Do you condemn any interference by Russia in the American election?
By Russia or anybody else?
You condemn their interference?
Of course I condemn. Of course I can. I don't know Putin.
Contribution will go up, as will Donald's, assuming he can't figure out how to get out of it. But what we want to do is to replenish the Social Security Trust Fund by making sure that we have sufficient income.
Hey, everybody. It is Tuesday, November the 8th, 2016.
2016. Election day turns into election night. What's up, America? Let's pick a president, y'all. I'm Amna Nawaz. We are live in our Times Square studio. We have a cast of awesomeness right here with you all night. Stay with us for live election results, real-time calls as they come in.
Projections we can make. It's 9 o'clock. Polls are closing, and we can project a winner in the. We can project that Donald Trump will win there, and in North Dakota, Donald Trump, the projected winner. In South Dakota, Donald Trump, the projected winner. Here's an interesting one. Texas, there had been some talk that Hillary Clinton was going to make a run for Texas. At this point, we're saying it didn't work and Trump won. And Wyoming, we're calling that, we are projecting that the winner there will be Donald Trump.
No, when you announce your campaign, and at that very announcement, when you are launching, you talk about Mexicans as rapists, and you go into immigrants as inferior and slander. That is the wall. And so many Latinos, no matter what their background, suddenly are shut off, suddenly are turned off. And it's going to take a lot of very diligent, focused efforts like this plan that the Republicans had in 2012, which has gone out the window, to bring that vote back. And
you're with you now. In Missouri, those 10 electoral votes ABC News can project will go to Donald Trump with 62% of the vote there in Missouri. ABC News can now also project, I believe we have a couple more results to bring you here, in Louisiana. 8 electoral votes there going also to Donald Trump, 62%. And in Montana, Donald Trump is also the projected winner right there. So 3 more states going for Mr. Trump.
You're a big Hillary Clinton supporter. How are you feeling?
I'm
Can you speak?
on the verge of having a little bit of a panic attack. We were sitting there watching these numbers roll in, and I'll tell you, the reality of a Trump presidency had not actually set in. I had not let myself think about what that would mean. This is already, in my mind, such a sad occurrence for humanity that millions upon millions of people have voted for bigotry, for racism, for white supremacy, for discrimination, for rape culture. And
strong words, very strong words. I'm an independent.
Okay, you're independent. Where Trump is the victor, according to the ABC News projection. So I want to get back to this larger question about what might have gone wrong in the polling here. But before I do that, let's just go through again the math here on the map. Let's go through the math on the map. What is Trump's route to victory here, and what is Clinton's route to victory here?
So what's funny is that, a couple of days ago, I would have said Donald Trump has one very narrow path to victory. He has to win Florida, which he's done. He has to win Ohio, which he's done. He has to win North Carolina, which he's done. So he's picking up all of the things that we said he needed. Iowa's still sort of curiously not there yet for him, but Iowa's got to be part of the equation.
Breaking news, we can make a projection in the state of Iowa. Donald Trump, we project, will carry the state of Iowa. So
right now, there's not a single one of, a lot of things needed to go right for Donald Trump to become president, but none of those things have gone wrong yet.
Yeah.
And so that's why he's still in the game. And the fact that you've even got pieces on the board like Wisconsin that we are even talking about right now.
Next, that Donald Trump will carry the state of Wisconsin. He will win Wisconsin with its 10 electoral votes. He's cracked the so-called blue wall that Hillary Clinton had tried to create. Donald Trump wins Wisconsin. Take a look at this. 92% of the vote is in. He's up by 75,000 votes plus 10 electoral votes. Donald Trump, the winner in Wisconsin. Let's take a look at the Electoral College map right now with that win in Wisconsin. Look at how close he is. Right now, he has 257 electoral votes. He needs 13 more, 270, to be elected president of the United States.
And the wall comes tumbling down. This is the blue wall that Hillary Clinton had talked about. This is a state that Hillary Clinton hasn't even visited since the Democratic convention.
So go ahead.
That's right. CNN can report that Hillary Clinton has called Donald Trump to concede the race. She has called Donald Trump to say that she will not be president, and I'm not sure the exact words, but probably to congratulate President-elect Donald Trump. So that has happened in the last few moments. Talking to a source who was there for it and telling me that conversation did happen. Our Sam Feist is also hearing from a different source that conversation did happen. So Hillary Clinton has made it very clear to her opponent that she believes that he will be the next president of the United States and not her.
J. Trump is now president of the United States. President Obama is the ex-president. And Mr. Trump, for the moment, steps away for the inaugural address.
What a great honor to be able to introduce for the first time ever anywhere the 45th President of the United States of America, Donald.
For their gracious aid.
I am so sorry to my world. I am so sorry to my world. This is not what we want.
We will face challenges.
There's so much potential
but we will get the job done.
for beauty and for devastation. In this one moment, it's just almost incomprehensible that they can exist right now. So,
and we are grateful
so
to
close.
President Obama.